right, let's bring down the music. And let's bring in Professor Flowers. Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, how's it going? Let me just turn you up a little bit. Okay, just say testing 1 2 1 2 for me.
1 2 1 2.
Oh God, you are very quiet. Hold up. Let me bring out the old.
Hold on, let me check my audio. Oh, I see. Hold on.
Okay. I might need to turn it down now.
Is it better now?
That's so much better. Yeah. Holy crap.
Okay, my gain was like way turned down.
No worries. No worries. Right, Professor Flowers, welcome in. Do you want to tell people who you are? Just introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Lua. I have a channel called Professor Flowers. I am not a real professor. It's just the name of my channel. I make video essays that tend to. I've come to realize like I really just want to focus on making video essays that are humanizing to marginalized or around marginalized people, and just kind of making content that's humanizing. Yeah. Thanks for having me on today.
No worries at all. It's an absolute pleasure. I'm just trying to get your cam to a decent size. Okay, that's great. So what we're going to be talking about today, and I love that you wanted to talk with me about this, because this is something that I've been, not just me, but my friend Sophie from Mars, Bad Bunny, who you know, and also Conquest the Dread, and a bunch of other people have been talking about, is the state of the online left and the future of it and where we want to see it going, kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's yeah, I don't even know where to begin, but it's just
well, let's start with the state of it. Let's start with the state of where we're at right now, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And FD Signifier had a really good video on it. People should check it out. But like he goes over just kind of like how we got here, because I think in understanding where we are now, it's really important to understand how we got here. And he talks about how, like with YouTube, there was like kind of this like response to feminism where there's like anti-SJWs, and how we're really just like in this state of we're like kind of like a response to that, but we still have this mentality of mostly angry white dudes who are trying to be edgy,
Right.
on these like really sensitive subject matters, and I think that explains like a lot of why we're here. And I think right now the state of things for me is I think the online left is ironically a place where people are like, I want to end these systems of oppression, I want to end systemic racism, I want to end sexism, and that's all great. But then you have a very like cis and whitewashed, like a generally cis male whitewashed place. And then you'll have these marginalized people be like, hey, like this place has a lot of issues. Actually, we actually need to be centering voices of marginalized people. And if we're not doing that, then like, are we really the online left, or are we just like some weird angry white dude club? And saying that just brings out like the wrath of this is all my opinion. This is all just my opinion.
Oh, I agree so far, by the way. Definitely.
Yeah. But I know saying sometimes the stuff, like I don't want to upset like I just know like when I say this stuff, people are just like pointing that out just like incurs the wrath of these people, and it's just ridiculous. And I've actually just like kind of checked out. I'm like, you know what? Like I'm just gonna try to be around more BIPOC people, because there are a lot of BIPOC people on YouTube, and we just tend to have like smaller channels, and I'm just gonna like surround myself with those kinds of people. But yeah, I think that's where we are now, where it's like there's a lot of there's a lot of people pretty much like ironically all the forms of systemic oppression are being perpetuated by the very people who are saying they're against them. And yeah, I think that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We actually watched the FD Signifier video last week.
Nice.
Easily one of the best videos I've seen in a long time. And absolutely everything. Like, it's funny because it's like I find myself I'm in no way a debate bro, and I'm in no way, sort of like in support of debate bros or anything like that. But I found myself sort of like looking at my streams and how I'm kind of doing stuff, and it's so funny how the Augie, angry white guy yelling, kind of inspiration has it's perpetuated itself in my content as well. Even, you know what I mean? Like even just in sort of like I'm just a political commentator. And it is just like I'm just an angry white guy yelling at stuff. You know what I mean? And it's so
like you said,
interesting.
you're an angry white guy.
Well, I'm an angry white guy, but I'm definitely not the kind of angry white guy that's, well, I mean, I hope I'm not. You know, I'm more than willing. I'm open to criticism. You know, as I think most of these people should be, because at the end of the day, you know, it's the way I see it is that like the angry white guy kind of people, the people that you mentioned who are saying things like, oh yeah, you know, we want to end oppression and we want to end, racism, misogyny, stuff like that, but then don't really do anything sort of beyond that. These tend to be like debate bros who are doing it openly, and then you've got like BreadTube that are kind of like doing it but not really sort of realizing that they're doing it. You know, it's kind of like that. It's like that, those levels of racism within white people in it. It's like you've got people who can either recognize the whiteness, or people who are just like, you know, sort of like saying, well, I'm not racist, as if that should be enough kind of thing. So it's kind of like, well, there's parallels there, right?
Yeah, and like I do think there's a lot of people who are like I do want to say like about, I think with debate bros, they're kind of getting scapegoated. And I actually was like reading about like scapegoat psychology, where it's like when you're in a family, like families will have a scapegoat because it makes them seem healthier because they can kind of blame all their problems on the scapegoat. And I do think that like debate bros are getting scapegoated because even though I can complain about debate bros all day, it's like people allowed this to happen.
Yes.
And it's kind of, it's an issue. I think I've said this before. I think they're the loudest facet of this really large issue. And I think I've realized like on like, you know, quote unquote BreadTube or the online left, or like, you know, what's at least mainstream on the online left, like in the best case scenarios, I often find like people will just like make their Ben Shapiro video and like be like, yeah, like I'm anti-racist because I made a Ben Shapiro video.
Right.
And it's like very low hanging fruit, and you know, they're entertaining. I love dunking on Ben Shapiro all day. Like when that WAP song came out, like he just like that was beautiful. You know, I love dunking on Ben Shapiro. I get it. But like people will kind of be like, oh, like I don't have anything racist to deal with because I think Dave Rubin is a joke, and Ben Shapiro and all these people. But there's a lot of, the thing that really disturbs me though is like, okay, like if you can't take a stance on debate bros, then I think, wait, can I cuss?
Sure. Yeah.
There's a like,
yeah.
Oh, okay. I just don't know. I just,
Yeah.
cause sometimes I don't know if I'm
just don't say the C word because we'll get banned.
Okay.
not because I, you know, I'm sure everybody knows that. Like, I don't agree with what happened this week about that. If you know, you know. If you don't, you don't. But yeah, anyway, yeah. Continue.
Well, if worst comes to worst, I'll say like biscuit or something.
yeah, defo.
But oh, I forgot what I was saying. I'm so sorry.
You were on about the Ben Shapiro stuff and the people think that that's enough.
Yeah, I totally just forgot.
Don't worry.
I totally forgot.
Don't worry.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. I know the score. But like, I totally agree. I think that a lot of people do see that as a really easy cop-out way, and then they just don't have to speak about racism ever again. I feel like, you know, it is a really uncomfortable topic for white people who've even displayed, you know, anti-racist sentiments in the past and stuff like that, because of course it's like, you know, we don't want to, we basically don't want it to be a thing. But I think like, so where I'm at with it is like, obviously it's like, you know, I'm desperate to kind of like, right, okay, I want to center voices of Black, Indigenous people of color. Like that's kind of where I want to go with it. And it's like, okay, well, where do I go from here? And that's a difficult thing to think about, because then you've actually got to reach out and speak to people. And it's like, I just think a lot of people are just like, no, I'm comfortable with my content. I know where I am. I'm going to keep doing this. It's profitable. I think people get caught in the profit incentive life and the comfortable life of capitalism as well when it comes to that. Yeah, just in general, I think that it's something that people don't want to push themselves to do. Like FD had a great recommendation. What was it called? Are you racist? And it's that documentary or something, where it's like I think it's like an hour long or something. He said it was right at the end of the video, and he was like, everybody needs to fucking watch this. Every white person needs to watch this. Because it's like, it's something that doesn't just point out like, okay, well, you're not saying that migrants are bad and immigration is bad and the Great Replacement is a thing, but like it's going to address how you actually just respond to sort of Black, Indigenous and people of color, like in general, innit, and that's addressing your whiteness. And I think just people find that really fucking uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's wild. Like I don't know. It's really wild to me how people have a hard time like addressing like whiteness and just the white supremacy that we are still entrenched in. But it's just really bizarre to me, because I think like I was saying this earlier today, like in a tweet, like I took a class on whiteness, and like for me and so many people there, it was so like freeing in a way, because so much of that class were people of color. There's Black people, Asian people, Latino people, like, and then there were some white people as well. But like for all of us, we were like, what is happening? Like, why are white people like so aggressive when you talk about racism? Like, why? Like it's, and then we took this class and we like learned about really like American history in like the past 100 years or so. We talked about like GI Bills, redlining district, New Deal era, and just talked, just all this history where like the white middle class is formed, and then while it's being formed, like Black people not only don't have these opportunities and benefits, but are prevented from this. And all these things are like, okay, like in seeing that, like you can see how like racism is perpetuated. And learning that was so like, this makes sense, because like it almost feels like horrific, like you're in a horror story where it's like, why are people so aggressive towards you? I haven't done anything besides just talk about racism. And then you learn about history and you're like, okay, this is what's happening. And like, at least I can like put into words like the experiences that I'm having around racism, because that in itself, like, it's just so confusing because you can't even like really talk about it. And now I feel like I can. But going back to white people, it's like when you're like, for me, I've had this experience of like, oh, I can finally put this into words. And I try to talk about white people and they are terrified. They're just like, they're so scared, and they're scared of like being seen as a bad person. They're scared of like, well, what, like, and like the thing is like, you just have to accept that like, hey, our society is racist. It's not when racism happens, it's a feature of our society. And just maybe if we could just accept that and deal with it, then we're good. But we're not good if you keep on lashing out at Black people because you feel uncomfortable about it. Like that's where, because like, it's also like we're born into this system. We don't have a choice. And so like we're all going to be like deconstructing sexism and racism and all these things. But what becomes infuriating is when like, okay, like you've been made aware, like people have come to you with this issue and you don't have the capacity to listen. And that's where it's like, okay, now that responsibility is really on you for just being a selfish piece of shit and like just being racist.
Yeah.
And that's where like my empathy stops. Like, but Bob, sorry.
Oh, look. Oh, no, that's absolutely, yeah, that's beneficial to the stream 100%.
Yeah, she really likes getting back up there.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's because that's something like on, my journey of recognizing my whiteness that I've kind of, come to terms with, because it kind of was like, I remember in 2015, I was sort of like on the verge of becoming a bit of a reactionary, just because it got exposed to politics all of a sudden, you know what I mean, for the first time in my life. And it's interesting to look back on now because everything that you're saying is like exactly it. So, you know, I was one of those guys back in the day who, like, when, you know, I heard about Black Lives Matter for the first time, I didn't really know anything about it because, of course, like, why the fuck would I? Not only am I a white guy, but I'm also just, like, in the UK. And to me, it was like, oh my God, they're just calling white people whiteies and all this. That's not right. You know, what the hell? You don't beat racism with racism. But then it's like, okay, when you realize like, oh, you actually can't be racist to white people. I understand it now. It's systemic. But then that sort of, because that is like an aggressive response, because it's like you're terrified of all the racist things that are just inside. They're inbuilt to us. And I say this to my chat all the fucking time. A lot of white people are just scared of being called racist. They're scared of like, oh my God, you've done racism. Like, I think they have a hard time, because I know I had a hard time separating doing something racist or something that like contributes to racism in a systemic sense, rather than just like, you know, being an EDL supporter or, you know, a fascist kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, because like whiteness is such a fucking wild idea. These things are actually like really close to each other. So it's like,
Yeah.
you know, you do have to like stop getting worried about being labeled a racist, because I say this all the time, what's the worst thing that happens if someone calls you a racist? Nothing. You won't get arrested. You won't lose your job. Nothing bad is going to happen. It just gives you an opportunity to like learn and move forward. And I think that's why, that's exactly it. Major League Base said it in the chat. All white people are racist, and white people have to kind of understand that in terms of like, it's a spectrum, right? It's a spectrum. It's like, you've got the inbuilt shit that is just there because of media exposure to white supremacist ideas, like white people are the best. They're always the main character in every single story, like everything you know, pertains to whiteness in society, and that makes us act in a certain way, sort of subconsciously. And it's like, here's the thing: you have to understand that that's a sliding scale. Of course, if you're not actively going out there, you know, trying to destroy black people or trying to destroy people of color in any sense, then, you know, well, your racism is something that you can learn from. You can develop that and change, and it's like not actually a death sentence being called a racist. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think, and even like thinking back to the online left, like I think there are issues with people getting canceled, where it's like if someone messes up and they say something racist, like
Right.
it's like it kind of can't be a learning opportunity because they'll get canceled. And I do wish there was like some sort of like um other accountability process that like didn't just immediately like be like you're done, because yeah, I mean, people are going to make mistakes. But I think the reason why I'm saying this is like, not that I want to enable, because I think also it could like easily, like I think what we've seen with Debate Bros is like not just having an accountability process or giving someone space to grow. We've basically been enabling racism, enabling sexism, enabling like all these issues through them.
Yeah.
But I do wish that there was like some way where it's like once like on people with public platforms to like actually be given the chance to grow from their mistakes. And if like I get, you know, if they continually just like are being shitty, then I think that's another story. But
Yeah.
but I do think in personal relationships, I do think it's really different. Like when people aren't on a platform where it's like you've said something racist and someone's called you out on it. And I guess worst case scenario is that person's like, I'm not gonna interact with you anymore.
Right.
But I don't know. It's not, in my experience, like when I've had that, like when I've told people like, hey, this is racist and it's hurting me, like a lot of times, like I am telling them that because I do love them and I want to continue having a relationship with them, and I can't because this is too messed up and I need that particular behavior to stop. And so like, I don't know, I'm kind of rambling.
No.
But
I think it's absolutely based what you're saying. And it is. I think you're spot on about larger content creators specifically who maybe they do feel bad, and I don't know whether that's subconscious or if it's at the front of their mind that they have enabled debate bros in some way, because of the way that their content has been. That of course, like now we are having these conversations, and when we listen to BIPOC creators, we are actually hearing, oh, okay, right, this is actually damaging. Then of course there is the threat of cancellation, but then again, it's only cancellation if you double down, right? It's like if if someone turns around to someone and says, hey, listen, what you said is a little bit problematic, like maybe you should change what you're saying. It's a different scenario if someone responds to that with an 18 tweet thread about how actually, no, I'm not racist, and someone who turns around and says, yeah, all right, fair enough, I take that on the chin, I'm going to learn from it. Which is why I think it's really absurd, and I think it's I think we have to. There's a lot of things in life where you have to just like sort of you have to push your fucking envelope of what you're willing to discuss and what you're willing to learn about and stuff. And I think that a lot of people find it hard to do that. We see that in the sort of general populist electorate about sort of left-wing ideas in general and stuff. Like, people don't really want to think about communism. People don't really want to think about anarchism. They don't want to think about like liberation for marginalized people, because it's hard work. It's like you have to actually like sit down and do some fucking learning. And we are in a world now, this sort of like neoliberal fucking nightmare, where it's really easy to just not do that. You can just like sit back and watch Netflix and be like, okay, you know what? I watched I don't know, the thingy. What was the fucking show called? Them. I watched Them, and I understand racism now. You know what I mean? It's like, and that's the kind of like place that we're at. And I think we just have to encourage people. And I think it's on white creators, really, to say to other white creators, like, listen, this is something that we need to change, which is, it's why I'm desperately saying that to my chat all the fucking time. Like, it's you have to be okay with the idea that something you might say might not be correct, and also I do try and instill an idea of goodwill in my community as well, because there does have to be that certain amount of goodwill. Like you said, there are people who need to be given that chance to learn from it. And it's finding out where that is and what that line is. And it's kind of frustrating that some people just aren't even addressing it at all. Like, we've had, I'm fairly certain that FD Signifier is not the first person to say this. I'm like almost definitely certain that this is like, right?
We'll talk about this so much.
Right. So, it's kind of like we have to really sort of boost this conversation. And, it is kind of like what being an ally is about, right? Being an ally is not just being like, oh, I'm not a racist. It's actually like hearing what BIPOC folk have to say and saying, right, this is what we need to change, so it's, yeah. And I think that in the way that the online left is now, in terms of just like, and this is why it's frustrating as well, because ideally we would want to be having huge conversations about things like this, for example, like how can the online left change? Like this would be ideal, but instead we're trapped in this world of either not talking about it or, is it okay to say the N-word? We're gonna debate that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's just like, what the fuck?
Gosh, sorry. I'm just like, I just like that made me so angry when I saw that trending on Twitter. I was like, we're here again, because this isn't the first time. This isn't the first time. Like, we're here again, and we're here again because it's just something silly around debate bros. Like, I'm just like, it makes me so frustrated. And then I this is just like a side note. I posted this thing about the Wet'suwet'en people who they're in Canada. There's like, I don't know why this is not getting more attention. Literally, this has been going on for the past few months. Like the government's trying to install an illegal pipeline on their land. They're forcefully removing these people so they can build this pipeline. They're like, attacking them. And this is all happening illegally, like the pipeline and the attacking of them and the removing them of their land. It's just like, but I would not have heard about this if one of my friends didn't tell me. And I'm just like, I'm like, it's blowing my mind. And then I see this stuff about, I'm going to try not to say the word, but I see this debate happening and I'm just like, why is this at the forefront? Why do we always have to talk about this like ridiculous stuff that they want to talk about when there's literally, the Canadian government is trying to install an illegal pipeline on Wet'suwet'en land.
Right.
And also Bell Hooks died yesterday.
Yes.
That wasn't even trending on Twitter. I was like, what is going? It just blows my mind. It makes me just really frustrated because there's such important things to talk about, and it's really engaging stuff as well. It's like it's not necessarily like economic or profitable in some ways to talk about BIPOC people, to talk about like all these issues,
right?
But it kind of could be because it's actually really interesting. It's like, like I just when I hear about like the struggle for sovereignty that Indigenous people have been going through, like whenever I hear about that, like I want to cry. And I think there's a okay. Sorry, actually, I realized I cut you off.
No, it's
so
fine.
I'm gonna
No, please continue.
Okay. I think I think for YouTube, I think there actually is a way that we can show solidarity for each other. And when I make a video on whiteness, I definitely want to talk about this more. I just haven't yet because I'm burnt out from talking about like race and anyways, that's blah, blah, blah. But I want to talk about how I interviewed this person called Scott Ainsley, and I was like, this person's a really good ally. How can we like share his strategies with the world? And like basically he talked to me about this thing called the communalization of trauma. And the communalization of trauma is a type of therapy where a traumatized person will talk about their trauma and they'll do it in a group of people. And then that group will tell that person's story to another group of people. And when the person who's traumatized hears that, they'll often find healing because they're not carrying the burden of that trauma on their own. They're now doing it with a group of people. When Scott first told me this story, I was like, okay, that's cool, Scott. Like, I don't understand this because I was asking him like how to be a good ally, how to fight these, how to fight racism. And he like kept on talking about that. And I didn't get it. And like now I get it because that's what he does. Scott is a blues musician and he goes on stage and before he plays a song, he'll talk about the history of that song. He'll talk about what those particular Black people who wrote this music have faced. And he'll talk about what Black people still face to this day. And I reached out to him because I was like, oh my gosh, like you're a white person. I've never seen a white person like care this much about racism. What's going on here? Like, tell me your secret. And like, that was his thing where it was like, he does that as a musician. Like he tells the story of Black people. He does it in a way that's humanizing for Black people. And he does it in a way where as a Black person, you're listening and you feel represented. Because a lot of times when Black people hear white people talk about racism, they're like, like, you're not really getting it right. Or like, this is actually condescending, but like, thanks for trying, I get. Like, but it's like, he was getting it. Yeah. And so he's like, as a musician, I get to do that for people. And the reason why I'm saying all this is because I think on YouTube and Twitch, I think that we can do that for each other. Not necessarily like in playing music, but I think we can really like tell other people's stories, like not just around race, but around all these different marginalized people facing systems of repression. I think we can practice the communalization of trauma. And that is also, I don't want to like, it's entertaining in a way where it's like, people are there for that. When people, because like, I think a problem is like, people are like, oh, like, I don't want to talk about, real politics because it's going to bore people. And it's like, well, when you talk about these things in a humanizing way, it is not boring at all because it's actually like extremely engaging. And I would really like to see the online left turn into something like that, where we are like really sharing each other's stories and we're doing it in a very humanizing and engaging way. And I think that also like doesn't have any conflict with YouTube and Twitch where people are like, well, it needs to be entertaining, so I don't know if I can touch this. It's like, actually, things being humanizing is extremely engaging, and I think we can do that.
Right. And I think as well, the idea of something needing to be entertaining is a lot of the times dictated by things like Hollywood, like these systemic structures and shit like that. So it's like, okay, so what's going to be entertaining, and it's like, all right, well, Hollywood just like makes remakes all the time. That's in the general paradigm.
The Disney remakes.
Yeah, we just do remakes. That's what we do. We do the same thing again and again and again. We keep making more money, and that's why the profit incentive is so damaging to stuff like this. That's why I have a saying, and I don't know how much it holds because I don't know. I guess I'm a little insecure about it, but to me, it's like capitalism enables racism. It enables fascism, because if you make things profitable like that, then of course it's gonna just keep going. And that's what it is. It's profitable to not touch these subjects. It's profitable to keep having these same arguments about whether we can say the C word and it's the same as the N word, over and over and over again, isn't it? And I think what people forget is that a lot of people have a lot of faith in new stuff, just new stuff. If you break the mold and try something different, then that's something different. And at the very least, you've done something different. And it doesn't really matter if it doesn't catch on straight away, because the more and more people see that you're doing something like that, they go, hang on, I've never seen that before. What's going on there? And if you've made it interesting and at least, digestible and understandable, a great piece of content in that regard, then people are going to be like, I could do that, because people are good at nothing if not stealing other people's ideas. So, and that's a good thing, because obviously the idea of stealing an idea is based in capitalism and stuff like that as well. But, I think that is an incredibly based way to start the evolution of the online left. I want to touch on what you spoke about, the wet sweating people as well, because this is something that I brought up on stream a couple of weeks ago, in like, this is actually incredible praxis what they're doing. I don't know how much you know about it, but like the way that they are sort of like dealing with this horrific, it's inhuman what the police, is the RCMP, what they're doing to the wet sweating people. The way they're dealing with it is phenomenal. They're preventing the construction of this pipeline, which is basically these indigenous people are on the front line of climate change activism. They're not like Extinction Rebellion and doing, flash mobs in the middle of Trafalgar Square. They're not, super gluing themselves to cars and just annoying everyone. They're actually there, stopping the construction of the infrastructure that enables climate change. And it's like, why are we not celebrating and talking about this stuff? Why are we not centering this activism? It's phenomenal activism. Like, in terms of where I want to see the online left going is in celebrating stuff like that. You know what I mean? In like actually like cracking on and being like a commentariat of like, this is how good, things can be. This is how good things can be. And just kind of inspiring people to get out there and do stuff like that. Because in the same way, if we inspire people to do this, how did you say it? Communalization?
The communalization of trauma.
The communalization of trauma. If we inspire people to do stuff like that, then of course that's going to inspire people to challenge the way that they produce their content. That leaves, I guess, it would leave BIPOC folk out of it, and also other marginalized people as well. Then if we're also gonna at the same time shout about the great things that activists are doing, that's going to lead to progress. We want progress. This is the thing that I'll never understand about a lot of left-wing streamers, because I think a lot of left-wing streamers nowadays, they just go, this horrible thing is happening, let's talk about that. And it's like, they talk about it, but then they don't talk about how to prevent it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or like what we can do, or like how we can stand in solidarity, or like it's just kind of like something to talk about as opposed to something to be a part of. And I think what's been like really beautiful about the Wet'suwet'en people and all the people who have like shown up for them, like there's this person that I've been watching. Her name she has a YouTube channel. Her name is Pam Palmater. Pam Palmater. Look her up. Please subscribe. She is just, she's so cool, but she's been focusing on what's going on with the Wet'suwet'en people, and she interviewed or had a stream with some activists who were there.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was, I've noticed this, like when I've heard like indigenous activists talk, like they like, I mean, obviously this can't like, you know, speak for everybody, but like they were just the people who were there were just like talking about how they were just getting attacked, like they're completely unarmed and the police are attacking them, the police are taunting them, really just enraging things to just like be like, you know, shoved on the ground and then have the police taunt you. And like um but also like this one activist was, I forgot her name, but she was like talking about how beautiful it was that she was like able to be there, because I'm pretty sure she's not Wet'suwet'en, but she's still indigenous. And so she was going there in solidarity, and she was like talking about like how beautiful it was that they were all there together. And I just remember like hearing that and being like, oh my God, like that is so beautiful. That is like, that's so incredible. And it really makes me excited, and like makes me want to be a part of something like that too.
Yes.
And I really think there's an opportunity here to like make content where we're able to show up for each other. And I also feel like I felt that during like the Black Lives Matter uprising that happened a couple summers ago. Like there was this thing that we would say, or we would be like, oh my gosh, what was the first lines? I haven't said it in a long time, but one of the last lines was, "We must love and protect one another."
Yeah.
And we would say this like this phrasing like every time before we like started marching, and it was just really beautiful, because it was like just this moment where it's like, this is why we're here, is because we love each other and because we want to protect each other. And that is really inspirational. And I think we should be using our platform, or you know, should, like, quote unquote should, because people, you know, can do whatever they want ultimately. But I think it's a tragedy that like we're not using our platforms for that.
Yeah. I think that you've hit it on the head again, because it is about love and empathy. I mean, at the end of the day, if you are a leftist in any sense, then at least you should have a modicum of understanding of love and empathy, or you know, be able. Of course, I know there are people who are incapable of empathy in different ways, but at least you should be able to understand that that is what matters, and that we should be caring about each other and caring about each other's struggles. You know, that's the definition of intersectionality, right? You know, so in terms of what we want to be promoting. And you know, I'm just touching on something that me, Thought Slime, and Sophie from Mars spoke about on the stream last night. We were talking about psychedelic liberation, and you know, about the importance of you know, and this seems so out of left field, but it's kind of like, you know, the basis of like, you know, psychedelic use. It increases your love and empathy, like to an extreme.
That's true.
Right. To just like an indescribable amount of empathy, to the point where you're just like thinking things that you never even thought before, and you're like, oh my fucking God, you know, like, you know, almost like I've been in tears after trips, you know, about how horrific some people have it in the world. And so it's like, that's the thing that we need to be promoting. And I think that I'm really glad that you said misogyny when we first started talking about Debate Bros, because bless you, by the way. Because that's something that is not brought up often enough, I don't think, because it's almost like it's like under the radar toxic masculinity that we see a lot. It's like, you know, it's not just Debate Bros as well. I think we see it a lot in just generally speaking leftist channels, and that's something that we really need to destroy. Like, there's nothing wrong with being like a sensitive soul. There's nothing wrong with being.
No, we need that.
Yeah.
It's not that there's nothing wrong with it. Like, we need that. We need okay. Like, this is why I always have like Audre Lorde like over here, because we need to be able to be in tune with how we're feeling, because how we're feeling is the reason why we understand things to be painful, why we understand things to be wrong, why how we're feeling and like how we love each other is the whole reason why so many of us are leftists, because we care about each other, which is informed by how we feel. We have to be informed by our feelings and develop an emotional maturity to be able to engage with how we feel. And if we're not doing that, we're gonna be fucked up. Like, end of story.
Yeah, well, that's exactly where the system of capitalism.
Sorry, I'm not yelling at you. I'm thinking of like people who are like, oh, like why do we have feelings?
You can yell at me. I've transcended, defensiveness when it comes to that shit. Yeah, like totally. Like it's where the system of capitalism prevails, because they are constantly alienating us from each other, making it very easy to just live a very isolated and cut off from everybody else society. It's we we don't, like, a lot of people don't talk to their neighbors. A lot of people don't interact with the community in a meaningful way. Lots of people remove themselves from the neighborhoods that they were, sort of brought up in, and then end up moving to cities or moving to different places, and they just don't bother to sort of make, I don't know, just make contacts that are meaningful in the immediate environment. They might make friends at work and stuff like that, but of course that's where capitalism wants you to make friends. It wants you to make a family at work rather than a family in, your home, because that is the most kind of important shit. And that is what we need to rally against more than anything. We've got to learn to stop being so scared of each other. I think that we have a real problem with people kind of just not really wanting. It's that fear again. It's that fear of being labeled as a weirdo or a racist or a homophobe, transphobe, or something like that prevents people. Because that's the shit that we see in the papers, that's the shit that we see in the mainstream media all the time. It's like the woke mob, you know what I mean? And that shit is like pushed to the envelope so much that even though fucking leftists are like, aware of that shit, a lot of them are still sort of like taken along for the ride and been like, oh, well, I don't want to say anything wrong kind of thing. I don't want to upset anybody. So I'm just going to stay at home and I'm just gonna stream, and we're just gonna talk about news and shit like that. And it's like, no, come on, like let's get together, show up for each other, protect and care about each other. It's totally fucking based. So yeah, like I think in terms of the state of the left online, it's we just have that, don't we? We just have like. There's people who are just like, yep, I'm very comfortable right now. And I think as well, people forget about how powerful the profit motive and sort of absorbing yourself in the capitalist lifestyle is when it comes to stuff like that. And I think that is one of the main reasons as to why people don't want to vary away from content. Because I've found myself like stopping doing things like gaming streams. Because I'm like, oh, well, I'm not getting a lot of viewers. I'm getting a lot of viewers when I talk about politics, so I should just do that. But then when I'm doing gaming streams, I'm like, oh, well, I like playing games and it's fun and we can still talk politics and stuff like that while I'm doing it. But it's not bringing in the viewers, so I'm going to stop doing that. And I think people, especially on a platform like this on Twitch, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm going to do what's profitable. I'm going to do what brings in the viewers. And I think once people get... Because my idea is sort of like, I'm going to do as best as I can now. I'm going to set myself up to how I want my channel to be in the future. I want to center BIPOC voices. I want to center trans and queer voices. I want to do the things that other leftist channels aren't doing. So hopefully, in theory, my mind won't get fucking corrupted by just like sitting back and just reporting on news stuff when I get to a stage where I'm like financially comfortable on Twitch, because I think that's what happens. I think people start off with like the best intentions, but then eventually capitalism grinds them down to the point where they're like, well, if I do something different, I could lose a lot of money. I could lose subscriber. It might be cringe and lose subscriber,
Yeah, and I think that's actually a huge issue. Like, especially I think it's an issue in general, but I think especially on Twitch because people raid each other at, like, so the reason I'm bringing this up is because I didn't know really actually that much about the world of Twitch, and after I had the debate, there were all these Twitch streamers being like, "This chick's genocidal, she's coming for us," and they were pretty much just drama streaming on me. I didn't even like know about them, you know,
Yeah.
because I kind of tend to know about other left left tubers on YouTube, and you know, just people just know each other, but I didn't know about the entire like economy because it kind of is an economy. So like people will just, and like I'm sure like you're aware of this, like people will, when there's drama, like people will kind of like have to talk about that drama to get views, and it's like a trickle down economic system in a way where it's like it seems like there's Hassan at the top in this leftist sphere. There's like Hassan, there's like Vosh, there's other people. I don't know about all of them, but like
Mm.
they'll say something, and you know, and then Twitter blows up and everyone has to argue about something they said, and then people have to like make content on it, and their content will mostly just be not really their own content but just talking about what these debate bros have said, and it's like thousands of people in their own like economic sphere of views. But then also you can't just be like, hey, like this is a bad take. You can't. Some people can't. Some people just literally can't because
Yeah.
of that. You know, I'll call it this like economic system of views because, and it's like genuinely terrifying because like I remember like when I first started off my YouTube channel, I was like, I really want to grow, and um, I had a serving job, so I was like, I need to like make music or YouTube work because I'm trapped at this serving job.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think a lot of people are like, I don't like my job. They're trying to make YouTube work. So there's like extra, there's just like, it's literally like your life is like on the line in some way, like trying to grow
Yeah.
because you're like, I want to not have my life be this like capitalist hellscape of a job. And so, yeah, I think all of that makes it really hard to incentivize people to be like, listen, let's talk about something that is maybe more meaningful, or like let's handle these topics with care instead of just having it just be like a drama stream. And like, not that I'm trying to like say it's wrong to always talk about drama, because like, don't get me wrong, I love talking about drama. I think it's fascinating.
Mm.
But it's like also we're talking about very sensitive things, and we're talking about systems of oppression. And I think people are not incentivized to really handle these topics with care, and instead like chase clout, instead to really like chase that drama for views, as opposed to like really pushing forward a movement that's going to change our society.
Yeah. And that's yeah, that is really, yeah, I mean, that is really the basis of it. Like, I totally get where people are coming from, and I totally relate to the, you know, oh my god, on the breadline kind of thing, because that is literally my life right now. Like, I'm a professional videographer. It's not a good idea to be going out and filming in clubs while coronavirus is happening. So streaming is literally my only form of income, and it's like, I am sort of like I even found myself doing it last night. I put out a poll because I was looking at my analytics, and it was like, every time I eat, people seem to tune out. So maybe I should just like not eat on stream. And I'm like thinking about stuff like
Whoa.
this, you know, right? And I'm just like, oh, you know, really? Could I just, you know? So it's like, right, well, maybe I can like be a bit hungry and just eat after stream. That's totally fine. But yeah, I totally get that. It is like that, and it's interesting. Like this is something that I think we need to expand upon. The pyramid of economics of the online left. I think that's so fucking interesting because it's like I watch Hassan like on a regular basis. I watch him every night. I don't think he's perfect. Don't get me wrong. You know, I'm a bit of a stan. He's like the least problematic fave that you can have. If you're gonna
Really
have
cool. I don't know anything about him because I just hear he's in that sphere.
Right.
But that's good to hear that like he's like the least problematic or
no,
like
yeah,
that.
he says some stupid shit sometimes, and I think that is because you get to a certain stage when he's got 40,000 people in his chat every day, and some of them are just like driving him crazy. They're talking about absurd shit. They're trying to bait him. They're trying to, and of course, you know, the reason that he got banned was because there were people in his chat who were just there, like, waiting to report him for any kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? So you can kind of understand why he has, like, you know, kind of like, it sometimes it looks like he's having a bit of a mental breakdown on stream, and it is a bit funny, but it's also a bit sad. But in terms of, like, the grand scheme of things, Hassan will just have his own takes on stuff. And, you know, he's at the top of that pyramid. So it's like, why do people not take a leaf out of that book? Because you can have your own take on stuff and not be problematic, and also learn at the same time. Like, there's been times where Hassan, like, people in chat have called out Hassan, and he's been like, what are you talking about? You're being ridiculous. But then they've pointed out what he's on about, and he's gone, oh, right, okay. And he gets it. So why are the rest of the online left not taking a leaf out of that book? You know, like I said, he's not perfect. Like, you know, he has absurd opinions about anarchists and stuff like that, and you know, there's all sorts of other stuff that you could pull him up on. But at the same time, generally speaking, like, if he's the most popular one, and there is this, like, pyramid of economics where people are basically looking to him for content, which is definitely what happens, why are they not being more open to doing new stuff, or, like, saying what they think, you know, and not just, like, it's sort of like, because it does happen, it gets compounded in this, like, oh, well, we're just going to talk about this, and we're just going to talk about this, we're just going to talk about this. And, you know, we do really need to be sort of and how do you reward people with big channels? It's hard, isn't it? It's like, how do you reward people for breaking the mold and being like, okay, well, I'm going to push the envelope a bit here and you know, actually center BIPOC voices for a minute, or center queer and trans voices, right? You know, how do you... Yeah.
Well, I think the thing is, like, I don't expect, and I know, like, Hassan's not, like, technically white, like, he just passes for that or something. So when I say this, like, I know there are people of color in these spaces that are bigger, but I think for the most part, it's like, I think this is also, like, very much an issue of just, like, uh of white people, where it's like, I don't think I talk about the direction that I want to see the online left go in, and I don't think that's going to happen on a mass scale because the online left is so white. But at the same time, there's all these, like, BIPOC people out here, and there's also, like, you know, all these, like, channels where people have disabilities, and, like, I don't know. I'm just hoping that we team up, and then, like, I think the people who, like, really want to talk about this stuff we're gonna have those conversations, and then there's probably just gonna be a continuation of the debate brosphere and people, but hopefully we can my hope is that we can just make enough distance from each other, from those communities, because, like, I think those communities are just gonna still, like, continue.
Well, that's it. I think, and it's like, oh, you're having a hard time with your child there, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. She's trying to attack. I made these flower pins.
Oh,
they're very cute, but she's trying to destroy
cute.
them.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah. And I think, well, this is something that I was hoping, because, and I guess it was, I don't know, I still have hope. I don't like to be down. I don't like to have the doom pill. I've taken the doom pill way out of my mouth. I've got Sophie from Mars to thank for that, because, you know, at the very least, if things are gonna go, if you are doom pilled and you're being a doomer and you think that nothing's gonna get better and everything's gonna be shit, then what's the point? Then why not just be hopeful anyway? Because if everything's gonna go to shit, why have, you know, the last days of society be a horrific experience for you, you know? So in terms of that, I have got hope that things are going to change, and I was kind of thinking that debate bros were fizzling out a little bit recently until this recent nonsense. And that's kind of what it is, isn't it? That's kind of indicative of how that goes, because it's like, all right, well, we've got to make more drama to stay relevant. We've got to do things like, you know, let's get Hassan's mods banned or some shit. Do you know what I mean? And then Hassan will talk about it, kind of thing. It's like, that's the kind of shit that they've got to do to stay relevant. And it's like, so I still kind of have hope that shit is fizzling out now, because it's like, how much longer can this continue for? Because it's so stale, it's so boring, and it's like, how can you repackage it in a different way that's going to keep people interested? I think people are going to start moving away from it very soon. We've already seen there's been like a bunch of people, like I've had people in my chat be like, yeah, I used to be right wing, then I checked out Vosh's channel, and then I wasn't anymore, but then I checked out other streamers, and actually they're loads better than Vosh. And it's like, okay, great. That's fucking brilliant, So we've seen that happen. That's like a legit thing that happens. And this isn't me sticking up for debate bros. I think the idea of debate bros having to exist in order to bring right wingers out of their stupor or just their lack of education, I don't think that's necessary. But it is definitely something that needs to be said because, again, how long can shit go on for? It's almost like the Let's Play thing on YouTube. You know about Let's Plays, right? So, Let's Plays were massive, like absolutely. They went from kind of like being sort of like, oh, kind of interesting to being like really, really popular in like 2015. Like I remember because I wanted to be one, and I remember how saturated it was and how hard it was to like break through as a Let's Player. And that gave way to, as FD was talking about in his video, the Gamergate nonsense, the sort of angry white guy yelling, but it became the angry white guy yelling about white guy stuff rather than like, well, I mean, just like media, right? Because it came from like James Rolfe and Nostalgia Critic. Nostalgia Critic actually went to the angry white guy yelling about white guy stuff. But yeah, it's sort of interesting how like these things eventually give way to something else. And I think that we've got to make sure that it doesn't give way to something else that is more damaging to the left. You know what I mean? I think it's got to be something that's better for marginalized people. It's got to be something that's better for the left in general. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit with like the popularity of anti-work. I think talking, about the subreddit anti-work, r/anti-work. So the subreddit anti-work, really, really interesting. I'm an anti-work hipster because I've always just been, generally speaking, a very lazy guy, and I don't think the word lazy is an insult.
Oh, like I don't dream of labor kind of thing.
Right, I think so. I don't know. I've heard about that, but it's basically the way that anti-work kind of operates is like, yeah, fuck jobs, fuck working. It's absurd, right? And this shit is really based. And that has like expanded now to sort of be an area where they talk about activism, where they talk about supporting strikes and donating to strike funds and stuff like that, and helping people in a mutual aid fashion who have been let down by work and stuff like that. And that's become incredibly popular at the moment. And that's a great sort of, what do you want to call it? Like a sign. It's a great sign. It's a great omen of things to come. Because if people are getting excited about stuff like that, then they're also going to get really excited about things like renters unions. They're also going to get really excited about things like, oh, actually, like direct action is actually very easy. And the longer that we perpetuate it, the more fatigued the state gets about it. Because there's only so much that cops are going to want to enforce the protection of capital. You know what I mean? Like we kind of saw lots of cops, not lots, but like a sizable amount of cops like resigning as a result of the Black Lives Matter protests. A lot of cops have sort of resigned in the whole sort of there was like I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but there was just this after Black Lives Matter. I think like one of the aftershock kind of things was like this whole ACAB solidarity. Like ACAB was just being plastered fucking everywhere, like to the point where I was at my brother's wedding a month ago, and my brother's a conservative, and he sat me next to a copper because he knows my politics. And yeah, I know, right? So I sat there, and this copper's like, he's asking me what I do, and I didn't know what he was doing or anything. I didn't know he was a cop. And I was like, yeah, I'm a left-wing political commentator. I'm an anarchist. I'm a communist. I'm an anti-fascist. Da, 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 da. And this cop was like, oh, well, you're not going to like what I do. So he just knew already. He already knew that yeah, it's not really popular. I know a lot of people don't like cops. And he was like trying to, I wasn't even talking about it because I was like, don't ruin your brother's wedding. Don't ruin your brother's wedding. And I was like, this guy was trying to defend his profession to me even though I wasn't saying anything about it. I was just like, all right, that's interesting. You know, that's the limit of what I spoke to him about it. You know, I spoke to him a little bit about politics and electoral politics and stuff like that. And he agreed with me about some stuff. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, he definitely wouldn't agree with my opinions about police in general, but I didn't touch that because I just didn't want to ruin my brother's wedding. So this is kind of where we're at right now, and it's proof that
I would have just ruined it. Sorry.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I'm like so like just like but anyways.
No.
That's what you didn't really think.
I get it.
I'm kind of a jerk.
I totally get it, and it's like, don't get me wrong, it was totally in the back of my mind, and I was like, the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I should just say to him, like, you know, what do you think about arresting people for smoking weed? Do you know what I mean? Like, I just wanted to ask him like that question, because that's the big question that coppers hate. They know it's bullshit. And even if they lie,
I mean, so many cops are doing like it's
right.
Like, so many of these people are literally doing like a mass amount of drugs, yet they're, you know, perpetuating the war on drugs. It's very hypocritical.
Yeah.
And so it's like not even they know it's bullshit. It's like they are literally out here doing the same thing.
Yeah. And that's kind of like, that was what was in the back of my mind. I was like, yeah, you know, cops hate that question. I should just ask him what he thinks about that. And that's kind of the thing. It's like, I think that's what prevented me from saying anything, because at the very least, I was thinking like, how can I doom pill this guy about his job? Do you know what I mean? I was like, how could I make this guy a doomer about being a cop? And I was like desperately trying to think. I was like, if I do speak to this guy, what's the questions that I could bring up? Because I didn't want to be, because at the end of the day, these people are already predisposed to think of people like us as like raving mad social justice warriors, you know, and we don't have it. There's no logic to what we say and stuff like that. So I was like, how can I really drop like a logic bomb on this guy's head, you know? And so that was kind of the main thing that stopped me from saying anything. But also in the back of my head, I was like, my mum will just not let me round for Christmas if this happens. But yeah, you know, so it's really interesting. But anyway, I digress. The whole point of that was to sort of like say, you know, these people are defending themselves to people automatically. You know, I don't even think that if I'd have said, oh, well, you know, I'm an anarchist, I'm a communist, I think even if I'd have left that out, this guy would have been like, oh, well, you know, I know it's not a popular profession nowadays, but I'm a cop. And it's like, this is the thing that people forget. I think a lot of leftists, well, I don't know if it's leftists, because a lot of leftists tend to be activists. They do tend to, you know, go outside and do stuff outside, you know, rather than be online all the time kind of thing. But I think a lot of libs, when they sort of entertain the ideas of leftism and entertain the ideas of anti-racism and supporting Black Lives Matter and all these things that they do in a performative manner, I think that they get scared and they're like, oh my God, there's no way it would ever work because cops, they'll just kill us all. You know what I mean? It's like, well, they can't do that. Like they literally can't do that. They wouldn't do that. There's a limit that this shit would get to eventually. And we've seen it happen in like multiple scenarios, you know, where like, it didn't even get to the point of that where cops were resigning over Black Lives Matter, you know? So it's like, yeah, I just think that people need to be more ready to be like, well, we could just actually do activism and things will change, you know? Yeah, that's where I was coming from with the anti-work stuff, because the anti-work stuff is like kind of showing that if you go out and just be like, no, I'm not going to work, you could bring an entire corporation down, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping that people will feel empowered to be able to do something. And I think like I felt that a little bit, where I'm like, wow, like when the uprising happens, like I remember my girlfriend was like, yeah, like, sorry, my cat's like scratching me.
Oh,
She's,
I
like,
know. I
purring,
saw
but
you
she's
were
like,
wincing
"Nope,"
before.
or she's like doing that. Anyways, it's very cute though, because she is hanging out with me, and I'm like, but when I remember like when I was like going to the protests, like my girlfriend was like, yeah, like protests like always end like really fucked up, because she's been to a lot of protests and like, you know, there's like violence and things like that. And I was just like so excited. But I was like so excited. I was like, yeah, like let's go. And then sure enough, like by the end of the protest, like it was like everyone was so tired, like by the end of the summer. But it didn't end on that note, at least where I was like that's where Elijah McClain was killed, and
Yeah.
like we just kept on protesting, and like his police officers like finally, well, so basically before that happened, the people who are leading the protest like got all these charges. It was really, really messed up. Like they had basically like 40 years of jail time that they were facing. And okay, I just can't do this. I'm so sorry. I love you.
Oh, see you later,
I can't.
baby.
I can't. Okay. Sorry, she's being a lot right now.
Oh.
Okay, I'm just gonna sit here. I'm sorry. But so yeah, basically, like they had like okay, fine, she just hops back up. Whatever. But they had like 40 years of prison time, and it was like really just depressing because like the police, like it was there's like time after time, there was like the police like being messed up to us, like shooting us with bullets, things like that. And like but then you have like these protesters who are literally just trying to say like, hey, stop killing black people. And like they have all these like BS charges.
Mm.
And I was like really depressed. It was like it seemed really grim, and like there really wasn't hope. Like it was like, what's the point of like protesting and going out and doing all this? But then they beat all their charges. They didn't get any sentencing at all because all the charges were BS. And then after that, Elijah McClain's killers were charged. And it was like, okay, like this, even it that took a lot of effort to get that one tiny thing to happen. But it gave me hope. And honestly, after that, I'm like, all right, let's go. I'm very excited. And I hope that other people can have that excitement too and be like, let's get this done. Because it's going to get done by being some sort of nuisance, honestly. Like, because when people protest, they're like, well, why do you have to make a ruckus? And I'm like, well, if we didn't make a ruckus, then no one would pay attention. So like, we have to do something. But I really hope that people feel inspired. Like, okay, we actually, like, we the people have the power, not the government.
Well, that's what it is.
Rally together.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. It's literally like, you know, if you look at the history of like labor strikes, if you look at the history of like civil rights movements, like, yeah, there's been like a lot of fucked up stuff. And it is a little bit worrying. But at the end of the day, it's the machine of capitalism and the media that perpetuates these stories of badness. You know, they don't want to talk about, you know, you're never going to see a headline in a newspaper that is like, Elijah, you might see like Elijah McClain's killers got arrested, right? You might see you know, stuff about the trial of Kim Potter. You might see stuff about that, but it's never going to be presented in a way that like, oh, these people have done something wrong. It's rare that we see that. And in the same way, they don't want to show victories associated by protests. If they do this stuff, they will present it in a way that like, okay, well, they were served justice by the law, which is the system. They won't be
right, which isn't going to do a darn thing.
Right. They will be like, you know, stuff like that. And then in terms of, you know, you'll never see something like a huge news story about Kellogg's strikers getting what they want, which is like what's basically sort of like that happened with John Deere, and that happened in multiple different companies in the past. And it's like, these are the things that if we saw them, that hopium would be right there for everyone. And I think that, you know, it's actually really good that this is something we've moved on to, because this is kind of like, do you know about positive leftist news?
Yes, yeah, Mexi's channel.
Yeah, Mexi's and yeah, the people associated with that channel are just like absolutely phenomenal, and that's the shit that we need to see more of. And that's where I personally think, as well as the things that we've said already, the online left needs to go. It needs to be a commentary at celebrating wins, because we do not hear about our wins. We only ever hear about our losses, and the losses are sort of made to be huge things. They're made to be like massive things. It's like, so I've been talking this week about, in the UK, they're making it illegal to protest, and they've got all these really vague amendments to the law where it's like, oh, well, you know, if you've got something that the police think that you're going to like use to attach yourself to something with in a protest manner, then you can just get arrested. And they can just do that to you if you're wearing like a t-shirt, because you could like wet a t-shirt and tie yourself to something with it, right? But it's like, okay, so you can look at that and you can be like, oh my God, there's no point in protesting. Oh, they're just going to arrest everyone and stuff like that. But then it's like, how far, honestly, do you think that will get through court? If everybody turns up and and protests still, the same amount of people who get arrested at protests it's going to be the same. It's not going to increase. They're just going to do exactly the same thing, because the way that they deal with protests in terms of like riot police and stuff like that, they're not changing their tactics in any way. They're just changing the law. So it's like, you have to look at this and go, all right, well, this is really bad, but is there any way actually that this can actually stop people from protesting? Will this actually be effective in stopping people from protest? And the answer is absolutely not, because I think the main thing that's stopping people from protesting in the UK at the minute is coronavirus and COVID and stuff like that. I think that people are either too busy partying because they know that maybe another lockdown's coming or something like that, or they don't want to lose their freedom in that regard. And a lot of people are comfortable. A lot of people are very sort of like just comfortable in their lives and stuff. They know bad stuff's happening. But again, that's a reason for the online left to be talking about wins, because the more wins people see, the more people will be like, oh, actually, this is something we can do.
Yeah. I mean, I am very afraid of getting arrested. Like,
yeah,
that thought has terrified me. Like, because it's just like, even if you didn't do anything wrong, like, I've just been seeing like friends get bogged down with legal fees. And then one of my friends still hasn't had his trial.
Yeah, so that's just hanging over his head.
Like, good, and that's from the uprising. And it's just like, oh, yeah, I don't know. It is terrifying, but I don't know. That's why whenever I go to protests, this is something that really bothers me. They're like, oh, like Antifa is like always wearing like all black and stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, because like when you're out at night, like there's like a higher chance that you like might get arrested, and they just like arrest people just to like be, just to scare people, or like it is a way that people like scare protesters. Will just mass arrest people.
Yeah.
But I always wear like black and stuff just so that way I can just sneak around and hopefully no one will see me. But
yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the thing is that it's hilarious, because you see the people who are complaining about this, and mainly the commentary out of the fascists, right? So you all see fascist, channels. Like the kind of people who say this are people like, people who are taking the piss out of Antifa, like JP Sears. I watched a JP Sears video the other week, and he's going on about how like, oh yeah, these people dress up like ninjas and you can't see their faces and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, but so did Nazis. Like a lot of Nazis have started doing that, because they've like, they've realized that like if people see them on camera, they can get reported to their places of work, and then they'll lose their fucking jobs. So
the update about like the insurrection is that like nobody was wearing a mask like at all,
right?
Because they didn't believe in masks, and they're like posting this on their social media. Like they did not understand.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just like it felt like a little bit good, because they like kept on giving us so much like shit for like wearing masks and like trying to like hide our identity, and then like they didn't do that at all, and like literally had a staged coup, and so now look at where you are now.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
it just cracks me up a little bit.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? And it's like, because I'm talking about in reference, it's a fairly new thing that Nazis have started wearing masks and face covering. This is I'm talking about
they've caught on.
Yeah, this is the Patriot. Oh god, there's so many of them with the name Patriot. I think Patriot Front or something like that, and they had these like white balaclavas on kind of thing, and it's like, obviously you're doing that shit now, because of course it makes sense to just like hide your identity, because as soon as you're a protester, especially in America, you become an enemy of the state, so it's one of those things. But yeah, I think you're right. I think the threat, of course, it's I mean, that's definitely an area of white privilege as well. Like, it's easy for me to say, oh, I'm scared of being arrested. But of course, like, most of the time, the consequences for BIPOC individuals are far greater than if a white person gets arrested. But I think that should speak to other white people, in that if you are a white person and you're going to go and protest and you're scared of getting arrested, it's like, actually, you've got a lot more sort of like, I guess, resistance to anything actually bad happening to you. You can use that in terms of like, And this is why it's so important to recognize your privilege as an ally in terms of being an activist, because what's the worst that's going to happen to you? At the end of the day, it's like, I think the worst thing that I've heard happen to a white person is that guy who, I don't even know what race this person was, but it was a guy who shot someone at a protest. He was an anti-fascist guy, and he shot a guy. I think it was a Proud Boy or something like that, and they just like sent.
Yeah, that was where I lived.
Right.
That was
That
was so wild because I almost went there that day, and then my friends came back, and I was like, "How did it go?" And they're like, "Somebody got shot," and I was like, "And they was supposed to." Anyways.
Okay, so DJ saying in the chat that guy was black, right? So like that's not even a white person, right? So it's like I've not even heard anything remotely like that happen to a fucking white guy ever. Like, do you know what I mean? In terms of like what the state is going to do to you. So if you sat there as a white person and you're saying, "Oh my god, I'm terrified of getting fucking arrested," like this is something you can use your privilege for to protect marginalized individuals. Do you know what I mean? It's like this is something that I think a lot of white people need to sit down and realize. It's like, actually, no, not that scary for us. Not that scary. Sure, it's still scary. Like maybe you're not going to be able to get a job or some shit, but it's at the end of the day, it's like 9 times out of 10, this shit doesn't actually get passed anyway. Like you said, like a lot of the charges of the people at protests, like they just got dropped anyway. And this is something that's like it's really gonna. When I was looking at the amendments to this law in the UK, this legislation about this, the anti-protesting bill. It was even stating how police and police chiefs and stuff like that all over the country have said, this is absurd, we can't do this. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to change this law and you're going to make us arrest these people for what? Protesting? It's a civil right. Stuff like that, and it's gonna cause more harm than good. So generally speaking, this is not something people in the UK should be that scared of. It's something to certainly comment on, and it's certainly something to point out in the Tories, escalating things to a fascist nature, but it's definitely not something that should deter us from protesting. And that's more what I want to see from the online left personally. I want to see us talking about like the realities of protesting, the realities of activism, and the realities of stuff like that. Because even if you don't want to go to an active protest, even if you don't want to go to a march or a protest or something like that, you can still get involved in direct action in your community. Or if that is something that you don't have in your community already set up, then you can think about whether you have the free time to set that up yourself. And it could be something as simple as starting a soup kitchen, or I don't know, starting a renters union or something like that. Like, that's something I've been thinking about doing in my block of apartments, because it's like, if you live in a block of apartments, generally speaking, most of those apartments will be owned by the same landlord. And if someone in those apartments is having trouble paying rent, and everybody turns around and says, "You're not allowed to evict that person, we're all just going to stop paying our rent," then the landlord has literally no power, So there's so many different ways that you can actually help the community and advance progression. You can help progress society that way. And I think that's what I want to see. I want to see like just helpful little things like that, just helpful little, pieces of advice, celebrating our wins and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's sounds really amazing. I'm in total agreement.
And we're trying to do this. I don't know how much Nicole has told you about this, but me, Bad Bunny, and Sophie from Mars, and Tim from Conquest of Dread, we're starting a new show in January. I keep saying December, but it's January. In January, it's on the set. We're going to start our first one on the 2nd of January, and we're looking to have a lot of different people on to talk about stuff like this, because this is really got to be where we go. It's really got to be where we go. We've got to start centering marginalized people. We've got to start telling people how to do things that can benefit their community, do things that can benefit society, and sort of break down theory. Because I don't know about you, but like, how do you feel about like theory? Because I think there's a lot of people who like do a lot of theory talk, and I think it could be like a little inaccessible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think theory can be helpful in that it can help put the language uh to things that you want to see happen or to experiences that you've had. But I think maybe the most important thing is like just like I posted this video or this podcast by Vijay Prashad. I might be saying his last name wrong.
Hmm.
But he just oh my gosh, I can't I'm gonna mess it up. I'm not gonna do it justice. Like he just like goes off on this rant because like he's like speaking from Glasgow.
Yeah,
I'm saying it wrong.
Glasgow.
Is that how do Glasgow?
Yeah.
And he's just like talking about just like colonialism. He's like just going off about like how literally like, the IMF like, lends them money, but it's their own money, and just goes off and off about like the condescension of colonialism
Yeah.
and about like climate change and how like, how rich countries export, blame poor countries, but like
Is it this guy, by the way, Vijay Prashad?
yes,
Yep.
yes. And it was so good. It was so good. I was like listening to this and I was like, I like showed this podcast at a party. I was like, everyone needs to hear this right now.
Yeah.
And just hearing a colonized person talk about their experience of dealing with white supremacy and trying to deal with climate change, but the condescension from richer countries, it was just like that to me. I think that actually is more important than reading theory, is just listening to colonized people about these things. And it's like it doesn't need to be, I think sometimes like theory can get bogged down in academia where it's like it's a very privileged place to be. It can also be very tedious and it can be very inaccessible, and it's like I don't think you need theory. Actually, I think just hearing people who are colonized, hearing people who are dealing with climate, who are on the front lines of climate change, even though those people probably have read lots of theory themselves, but just listening to them, uh that's I think that's what people really need to do, which is where YouTube and Twitch can come in, because you have these people talking about this stuff in very engaging ways where you're like, yeah, like just hearing them can be sometimes a better summary than just reading a book, actually.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point because, we see these huge leftist YouTube and Twitch channels, and it's like, how often do we get interviews with people like that? It's so rare. And I
Well, they're
feel
not
like,
doing either. Like
yeah.
they're not reading theory, and they're not listening to colonized people. So it's like they are just really fucking up.
Right.
That's all I really have to say about that. It's like, wow, like you're not doing either. At least pick one. But yeah, sorry. I
No,
can
no, no.
just
Yeah, it's
go
absolutely
on
valid.
about my disappointment in these people for a very long time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, totally. And I think that's really important to state. Because yeah, it is. I feel like, again, it comes back to that same thing we were talking about, where it was like, we just want to do what we think is good. And I feel like maybe because when I do shows like this, when I do live streams like this, it feels like a podcast. Like I'm very, very rarely talking to chat, and I know people are chatting, and I'm sorry that it's not as interactive as it normally is. But here's the thing: it's like, why should I not do stuff like this? Why should I, shy away from doing something that's more in a podcast kind of style just because that's what podcasters do? It's like you can't just limit yourself and what you produce just because you think it's not gonna track as well. Like, how do you know if you don't try? Like, you just don't really see a lot of these bigger leftist channels or on YouTube or Twitch do anything remotely similar to that. And we have so much opportunity to. It's like, if I reach out to Vijay Prashad and say, hey, do you want to come on my like 30 viewer Andy fucking Twitch stream and talk about like, your experience and stuff as a colonizing person, like, then, hopefully he'd say yeah, but like he's more likely to do that with someone who's got a huge fucking platform. So, I do think it comes down to like, it's again like the abuse of a platform. It's not like, because of course, we can go on about debate bros till the cows come home, but it's not like debate bros. It's the insidious nature of choosing not to do that when you're not even a debate bro. You know, it's like, you know, well, why are you not using your clout? Like, you have a lot of clout, you're not problematic at all, you have a huge reach, and you know, why are you not using that to your advantage? Why are we not making moves here? Why, you know, we could, Sophie says it all the time, if we get literally everyone in the world, it's not going to happen, but you know, in theory, capitalism will end if literally everybody takes, like, you know, a general strike. Like, if everybody decided to not work tomorrow, the machine would end, right? So if that's the power of, like, having a platform and having a reach, like, if you reach as many people as possible and be like, yo, just don't go to work tomorrow, and it's that easy, right? It's that easy. Like, we could make such moves with what we have, and the moves that are being made are just not, they're not even moves, really. Bless you again.
Thank you.
So yeah. It's
but
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. I've got nothing left to say.
But I do want to, like, just touch on how, like, that, I think why I feel so done with the online left in general is because like, yes, debate bros aside, like, people are just not really giving their platform or using whatever platform they have to really try to platform marginalized people. And yeah, I think, to me, I see that, and I'm like, I think I do just feel really done. Not that I don't, like, hope that things can change, but I do think my energy isn't, like, trying to, like, get the online left to change. It's more so like, okay, who are the people that I think are doing great stuff? I'm when I try to, like, get closer to those people and do that work. But I do think it's very much like, I do think, like, the state of the online left is very much, I mean, it is an issue. There's, like, issues of, like, sexism and issues of ableism, but it also seems like it's very much like an issue of, like, it being a white person issue and it being a white guy issue. And I think it's gonna be up to those people to fix that issue. Cause I think basically what happens is, like, people of color, like, I think I was very naive, where I was like, "Oh, like, I really like all these YouTubers. I like H Bomber Guy, I like Big Joel, I wanna make videos like them." But there was a lot of people who saw LeftTube and were like, "Yeah, this is actually just a bunch of white people talking over people of color, and I just don't wanna be a part of it." And they never even really tried to be. And, uh yeah, but they also, like, are doing fine. A lot of people actually still have, like, way bigger channels than I have, and they understand that. And so I think I just took me a long time to really be like, okay, like, this place is not, it it can't be up to, like, people of color to change this. It actually has to be white people who want to change it if it is going to change. And also, like, I think it's, like, probably a similar story for, like, issues around sexism, issues around ableism, where people are like, "Oh, this is kinda just a toxic space on multiple fronts, and I'm good." And so I do think you have, like, all these content creators out here who aren't necessarily considered to be a part of the online left or, like, left too, but are still basically doing leftist work. And I really wanna network with those people and be like, "Okay, like, we really want to make content that hopefully can really inspire people and, like, doesn't center toxicity." So, yeah.
Yeah, and this is why everyone should, you know, absolutely. This is why I wanted to watch FD Signifier's video on, you know, like the other week when it came out. And I think that it needs to be said again that if you've not watched it, you know, I'm gonna drop it in the chat again, because FD drops a bunch of BIPOC creators at the end, that like you say, doing their own thing and kind of, like, not really got involved with LeftTube at all in terms of you know, wanting to try and engage with them, or you know, reach out to them and stuff, and they are doing great, you know, and these are the
They're doing great. Like,
yeah,
they don't, like, I there's, like, this kind of, like, myth of, like, or not myth, but people are like, how do we pull in people of color to the online left? And it's like, actually, there kind of is an online left of people of color. They just know not to mess with white people because they know better. And I'm actually a dumb bitch who thought that would be something worth doing.
Sure. Yeah. No, and I think that's why it's so important, because it is, you know, I think that that's the one thing that I take away as, like, a white person who is part of the online left, is that, like, you know, my job now is to reach out to more creators, who, like you say, are doing their own thing away from the white, cis white, well, it is actually cis het white, online left, and center their voices. And it's like it shouldn't be that hard to do. It's just as simple as, it's like that whole thing, I see that a lot in terms of, when people complain about how white people do performative shit in when, oh yeah, there's something horrible that's happened to the black community, here's a bunch of the creators to go and support. You know what I mean? I'm going to drop a bunch of a list of like, people of color, indigenous people, to go follow and support, right? But it's like, you need to expand on that. Really, it's about engaging and being intersectional and listening, and just fucking like, it's just not that hard, and it is stressful as fuck, right? It's obviously it's it's going to have been more stressful for you because it's something that you've seen a lot more kind of thing. But it's when I see it now, it's like this really isn't hard to change. What I'm taking away from this is that, like, basically tell other white creators to fucking sort their shit out regarding that, and also do better myself, right? You know what I mean? Because it's just like such a simple thing. And again, it comes down to that like thing of challenging yourself and being afraid to be called a racist. It's like look, just fucking do it. You know what I mean? Like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? Like Terence McKenna, we spoke about. I've got Terence McKenna on the brain because I was thinking about him last night. But there's a great quote that he says where it's like, nature is very interesting in the fact that sometimes when you take a leap, it seems really scary. If you take a leap of faith, things can seem really scary, but 9 times out of 10, you will be rewarded when the abyss is actually revealed to be a bed of feathers. It's as simple as that, really. I think that people, and you can equate this to like capitalism as well. You can equate this to how business people work in capitalism. Like 9 times out of 10, you see these stories of like corporations that have like absolutely fucked over their employees by doing something absurd, and you're like, why the fuck did they think that they would get away with that? And it's because these people take risks, and they aren't the good kind of risks. These are the kind of risks that mean that people get hurt. But the kind of risks that we're asking people to take are not ones where you'll get hurt. The actual risk that you're taking is not a risk at all. It's like you're changing your content a little bit, just the smallest bit, to sort of like center BIPOC people. So yeah, it's and I'm seeing stuff in the chat like, yeah, listen to some Kwame Ture. I was listening to Kwame Ture the other day. Yeah, absolutely based as fuck, and reading Fanon as well. Yeah, and Thomas Sankara had some good shit to say as well. We were watching some. It wasn't really speeches because I don't know Sankara. I don't know if Sankara did many speeches, but Sankara is like an incredibly based individual to get hopium from. Like, he literally lifted Burkina Faso out of like colonial France, and made the patriarchy disappear sort of overnight. He was like, I don't know how much you know about Sankara, but he like was like, right, we're gonna make a day where men just have to do everything that women do. Like, you literally just have to do that.
Wow.
And that's fucking
That's
based.
what we need. We should just like switch roles and be like, okay, today like you're going to be like a black man. Today you're going to like have, or like as much as like try to have this disability and see how inconvenient it is.
Yeah,
and,
right.
like, we just need that. And then we can all be like, oh, you know what? This sucks. No one should have to go through this. Let's try to like make society good for everyone.
Yes.
And functional for everyone.
And that's kind of what it's funny because, you see that phrase that's used quite often, and it's very true. Like, white people are scared of recognizing their oppressive nature because they are scared of being oppressed themselves. So it's kind of like, I don't know if I'm getting the quote right, but do you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
Why people are terrified to be oppressed, because they know they know what they do to other people, really, and they know how much marginalized people fucking suffer. So it's like, yeah, fucking hell, like, if you know that, at least, then how hard, like, why is it so hard for you to, address your whiteness and kind of understand that? But I think that would be the best way to do it. Like, just have, just literally have a revolution, and whoever's, leading the revolution, whichever group of people it is or whatever, just be like, right, well, here's what we're going to do. You're going to have the learning month, like Good Morty said in the chat as well. Like, how about a month? Yeah, just have like a month where you have to experience society as how, black people have always experienced it, and you have to experience society how women have experienced it if you're not a woman, So it's, yeah, I think that's super based, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
White people are afraid if they lose power, non-white people will treat them how they treated non-white people. Right.
Yeah, they're genuinely afraid of that. And it's like, it's just so weird because, like, I don't know, whenever you like watch movies about like people being oppressed or something, or like people just want to be okay. Like, people aren't like out here because like people can't even think as far as revenge or things like that. People are just like, I just need this to end. And that's all really people are focused on. So it's just like,
well,
I think for the most part, not to say that there aren't people who want revenge. There are, but it's a very small minority of people. Most people are like, I just want to end this oppression. I want things to be okay. And I think worst case scenario often is people are like, I just don't want to interact with the people who have oppressed me. But that's not even them being like, I want to hurt them. They're like, I just don't want to interact because it's been so frustrating. And so I'm going to just be away from you. Like, it's not even like I'm going to hurt you or things like that. So it seems so out of touch to me that that's like a legitimate fear that I hear come up a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely absurd, and I think that plays into the
or not legitimate, but I legitimately hear it.
Yeah, and I think that is that's also a result of white supremacy. That's also a result because the fear that like there is like a racist trope of like the vengeful black man kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Or like the vengeful BIPOC person, and it's like, well, this is just not a thing really. And again, that's proof of how much these people interact with BIPOC individuals, because it's like it's just not a thing. Like I remember very vividly, because I'm from the extremely privileged position of like having moved from a completely white town where there was like one Pakistani family in like our street, right, and that was it. Like everyone else was white or Irish, you know what I mean, and that's it, right, and then I moved to Manchester, which is like one of the biggest multicultural centers in the UK. Is like, and I went to a school where I was like one of like 4 white people, and it was like really sort of like eye-opening, and it's like, oh my god, and you immediately sort of like have this like, oh my god, what the fuck, like, what's going on kind of thing. And so it's like, from my perspective, I went through that like quite young, do you know what I mean? But then it's really annoying, because even though that happened to me, I was still taken away with this rhetoric, right? Because I'm not at school all the time, you know what I mean? I'm like, sort of like out, doing my own thing kind of thing. But the black people and the BAME people that I made friends with at school kind of thing, it was like, none of them wanted to fucking hurt me because I was a white guy. Do you know what I mean? If they ever wanted to hurt me, it's because I said something fucking stupid and ignorant. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, that is like completely understandable, right? And it was never like, I'm gonna get beat up. It was never like that. It was like, you'll get shouted at, and then people will just be like, don't talk to him, he's a racist. And it's like, and it's that fear again that is just like, I think you see people like come to terms with that when they're older. And it shakes them so hard, because they're like, oh, what the fuck? They've never experienced it before. They only know of BIPOC or BAME individuals, like what they see in the news or what they see in media and stuff. So they fucking shit themselves. One of the biggest things that we would get, like I would hear some of my white friends say when I've been growing up, is like, oh, that area is pretty ghetto. And I'm like, huh? Do you know what I mean? I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? What does that mean?
Yeah.
And they just mean that area is black. Like, that's what they mean. Like, it's like a,
Right. Oh my gosh.
you know what I
I
mean?
grew up around white people because I was adopted. And
Yeah.
so I would hear this all the time about this city called Aurora. They'd be like, "Oh, that's so ghetto." And it's literally it's like for the most part, it's like lots of suburbs. It's just this pocket of Colorado that like doesn't have only white people in it.
Right.
Like, and I'm just like, it is so offensive to me. Like, and people would just like take it. People would or not take it. People would just be like, "Yeah, of course, that's the ghetto." And then you go there and it's
Yeah,
fine.
it's literally just a normal place. Like,
It's
there's
so
nothing.
racist.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
And I actually like lived there for a bit and it was my favorite place to have lived in Colorado. Like it was yeah, so far. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was really frustrating to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is kind of where it's like, you know, we've really got to just start challenging each other. Like, white individual, I'm talking to white individuals, like, you know, specifically here. It's like we've got to start challenging our friends on stuff like this. And it's, you know, if you're not using your voice and, you know, your privilege to speak out against this stuff, it's like, you know, nothing's going to change. And it's all well and good being performative, but, you know, actually just like, you know, your fucking uncle at you know, Christmas or whatever, it's like, yeah, just like call him out if he says some bullshit. Like, it's dead easy. It's actually really easy.
Yeah. Like it really frustrates me that people can't do that. It's like,
Mm.
wow, you can't even like confront your family members when they're being messed up. Then like are what are you even doing? That's like the first place where it's like I think it just seems like very like it just seems very enabling, but it's also like a personal choice because like for me with my family, I was like, yeah, like I can't hang out with you if I can't just be myself. And if you say something messed up, I'm gonna address it.
Mm.
And I also understand if you don't want me to address it, then I just won't hang out with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I understand that's very hard to parse out, but like, you know, it doesn't mean that you have to be like, "Hey, you know, screw you," but just being like, "Hey, that's racist," or "Why do you think that?" And it's
Yeah.
like if you can't even do that for people, then, you know, then you're not really doing probably anything in a lot of ways. Like
Yeah.
I doubt you're someone who's really doing all that much. So, I don't know, it just is something that just, like, really bothers me, like, because also, I think the reason why it bothers me too is because a lot of times white people will be like, "Oh, like, I'm not racist," and you're like, "Okay, good for you," like, it's like, I get this sense that, like, people, like, want me to, like, almost forgive them, and then it'll relieve their guilt, and then
Yeah.
it's like but then they can't even, like, address their family when their you know, their uncle's saying something racist, like, just be like, "Well, why do you think that? Where did you hear that?" You know, and just challenge people you can challenge people in kind ways,
Well,
and
yeah, and it's funny because for white people, it's even easier than that because you can say,
right.
"I used to think that too," because of course you did. Do you know what I mean? There'll be like people who don't even want to recognize the racist person that they were in the past before they learned it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Before they unlearned it. Sorry, you know. So yeah, sorry I
Right.
cut you off there.
I'm just agreeing, yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, it's like because the thing is people wanna act like they never have had these racist thoughts, and it's like it's just like, if people could just be real. Like, that's the thing that really frustrates me, isn't to hear a white person be like, "I used to think this, and now I don't." Like, it's actually like a breath of fresh air when I hear a white person be like, "Yeah, I used to think this," and not in a way where they feel guilty, but just more just like, "That's how I used to think, and now I don't think like this," and when it comes up, I talk with people about it. Like, for me, like, that's actually the thing where I'm like, Thank you, that's really cool to hear." What's not cool to hear is a white person being geez, I can't believe that white people think this way. And I'm like, really? You can't believe it? You've never struggled with this before. Like, and I think I very rarely have met like white people who like have somehow never struggled with that. There was this Scott Ainsley person that I interviewed, and I was like, how have you like not really struggled with racism in this way? And hearing his story, it kind of just sounds like he always like thought it was BS. Like he had black friends that he wasn't allowed to hang out with, and it sounds like he really resented his parents over that. And
Mm.
like it just sounds like he just had like kind of got it And then
Yeah.
also like my girlfriend, she's white and she like grew up in she grew up in Kenya and then just grew up around black people in this way where like she just has always been like so appalled by racism and also like really cares about black people like in this way where it's like I think white people also just don't care about black people. Like they feel guilt, they get racism's bad and they feel guilty, but they also like do not care about us.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I when I talk with white people and they're like, I can't believe it, I'll be like, yeah, this person said something. You know, I'll talk about how people like have like made fun of my hair as a black person or made fun of, you know, just something racist. And people be like, I can't believe it. And I'm like, you can't believe it. I'm having a hard time thinking that you can't believe it. Because when I tell
Yeah.
black people this stuff, they're like, oh yeah, like that's happened to me too. You know,
Mm.
like every black person has like a bunch of stories of like the same thing. Kind of like how like with men, it'll be like everyone knows someone who was raped, but nobody knows a rapist.
Yeah.
That kind of
Yeah.
thing where you're like, I kind of don't believe that you don't know any rapists, right? I kind of don't believe that you can't see white people doing this. So that's what's frustrating. All that to say.
Mm. Yeah, and it's so it's not funny. It's just like very telling that this is like, you know, the main problem with the online left. You know what I mean? This is what we're talking about now, and this is like we've been talking about the online left, and it comes back to this. Like it's just this is it. You know, it's like being unable to recognize privilege, being, you know, surprised, you know, pretending, doing performative things in order to, you know, appear not racist. And it is like that. It's like, you know, and it's funny, you're saying all this stuff about like, you know, some white people like, you know, want to be congratulated for not being racist. Like, yeah, I used to think that. I used to be like, yeah, sick, like I'm not racist, like I've done the job. I've done it. Like I've conquered racism, and it's like it kind of almost feels like that's where these guys are at. They are like, well, I've conquered racism, so I don't need to talk about it anymore. And I think what you said about it not. It's that white people don't care about black people. It's not just that. It's that it's that's together with the alienation that they feel about other marginalized people and other even fucking working class white people, because it's like in the way that a lot of people are sort of like saying, you know, oh yeah, we're going to talk about this news story and it's really bad and things are really bad, and then like not doing anything about it. It's like it's very similar. It's like, you know, actually like, where is the empathy? Where is the care and love for those around you? You know, it's like it just really fucking, it is, like you say, frustrating. You know, yeah, absolutely fucking wild. I just want to see more opportunities in terms of like not opportunities, but like, you know, I just want to see more just movement, just in general, just more movement. It's so frustrating that we've been here for like, you know, a year since the Black Lives Matter protests, like more than a year, like a year and a half, and it's like, you know, we're still seeing these like horrific fucking quote unquote leftists. Someone did a video about it recently. I can't remember who the fuck. Well, you've got a video there, which was a stream about Kyle Rittenhouse. So I don't know exactly what you spoke about in that, but I know that there's you know, that someone did a video, and I imagine a few people have done videos about how there are quote unquote leftists defending Kyle Rittenhouse, you know, and it's like,
Yeah.
this is where we're at after everything.
It is disgusting. And like one of the people who did it. Wait, can I say this person who did it, or is it like too
Sure,
much
yeah,
drama streaming?
defo, yeah.
Okay. Owner Box was like defending Kyle Rittenhouse for quite some time. And at the time, one of his last videos he did was about Lauren Southern. And I was so disgusted, because I'm like, this person can like make a video about Lauren Southern, pat himself on the back because, oh, look, I'm being anti-racist because I'm making a video about the great replacement lady, and then go onto his Twitter and defend Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah.
It's like, And I do want to say about Kyle Rittenhouse, it's not that like you can't make the legal defense that it's self-defense. Like you obviously can, and they obviously did, and that's why he got off with it just being self-defense. The reason why it is so infuriating is because this person went with an AR-15, a 17-year-old, when he shouldn't have had an AR-15 in that state. To defend property because people were burning down property in protest of the systemic murder of Black people. And the reason why I think this is so messed up is because people don't listen to you. If unfortunately, like when people often just march in the streets, like this is like my argument for riots. And I'm not saying that, like riots are good, but I'm saying that people, there needs to be like some sort of social disturbance because people don't listen to you, and people care more about property getting damaged than they do about literal Black people being killed. And this child thought it was appropriate to go down there and stop that form of protest that is actually effective and getting people to listen. He wanted to stop that form of protest that was saying, hey, stop systematically killing Black people.
Yeah.
And then they let him off with not even a slap on the wrist. They let him off completely scot-free. And the reason why this is also an issue, even though I can understand why people have made the self-defense argument, is like it sends the message because the state is smart enough to understand the shaman person at the insurrection. They gave him a longer sentence because they understand that it sends the message, hey, you can't have a staged coup or you can't have an attempted staged coup. And they let this person off, and it sends the message that, hey, if you end up killing people who are literally protesting the systemic murder of others, then you could very well not even have any punity. Like you can just do that without it being expecting any consequences. And that is why it's so frustrating. So if you're I can rationally understand you can make the self-defense case, but you can't be saying that without the rest of the context of the message that's being sent to Black people about how little our lives matter. And as a white leftist, you really don't need to be going out of your way to be defending Kyle Rittenhouse. Like, fuck you, basically.
Yeah.
That's sorry. I just got very heated up. And
let it out. Don't apologize.
I can't believe it. I can't believe that people don't see that.
Yeah.
People don't see that like that is the context, and that's why so many Black people are upset. It's not just that like, sure, you can legally make a case for self-defense. It's the rest of the context that is such a slap in the face. And to say that you care about Black Lives Matter and to not get that, you can just sincerely go fuck yourself and fuck everyone who keeps on supporting these fuckers.
Yeah, 1,000%. And it's actually extra funny that you mentioned Loner Box because I'll tell you a cheeky little story. So I was watching on stream Hey It's Vadim. He did a video on Lawrence Southern on why Lawrence Southern, was really bad and was definitely associated with the murder of a bunch of people in a mosque in New Zealand, Christchurch. And he references Loner Box's Lawrence Southern video. So I'm there going, okay, Vadim's a pretty decent guy, you know what I mean? Like, I know he's been on a debate or two, but he's not like a debate bro, and he seems pretty smart. So I'm there and I like go and follow Loner Box on Twitch, right? And Jesus Christ, it is actually incredibly crazy that we're talking. You mentioned him specifically about this because the first ever stream of his that I watched, when I clicked on it, he was defending Kyle Rittenhouse, and I literally caught him say how he was in the middle of it, and he was talking about how like, oh well, yeah, but you can't really say that Blue Lives Matter is associated with racism or white supremacy.
Okay.
And I was like,
okay.
I was like, bro, are you insane? Have you been outside? Have you spoken to anyone else? Like, the fucking, like, what do you think Blue Lives Matter is? What do you actually think Blue Lives Matter is? It's like, where does it come from? Black Lives Matter. They replaced the word black with the word blue. Why? Because they side with the police. That's what it's about.
They did it to silence Black Lives Matter. Like, they only say Blue Lives Matter in response to Black Lives Matter, so because they wanted us to shut the fuck up.
Exactly.
So it's just like, it just infuriates me that these are people who have these larger platforms on the online left. And like, I think for me, like, the cherry on top the cherry on top to the debate bro drama that I had was when someone just like started like just like attacking me on Twitter, and it was around the debate stuff, and they thought I was a genocider, and they
Oh,
had
fuck.
Black Lives Matter in their profile. And I'm like, and you're attacking a Black person, and then people are like, well, Black Lives Matter doesn't mean you have to agree. And I'm like, sure, but you are attacking a Black person and saying that this person is genocidal when they have never said that, and they don't believe that. Like, and you are saying that because they're talking about the self-determination of colonized people. But it's just like, that happened constantly, like thousands and thousands of people who are like, yeah, like I'm against racism, who had the audacity to say they're against racism, perpetuate this. Like, that was where I was like, yeah, I'm not. I want to make like a why I'm leaving the left video, but it's really just like the online whiteout. I think I'm gonna do that
Yeah,
and just be like,
totally.
I cannot do this. I have put myself in a bad situation, and the bad situation is being around you, like not you, like not you, but
No,
like just
I
being around
understand.
these
No, I know.
people.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't. I'm not actually looking at your face right now because I'm not. Like Twitch is like a few seconds behind, so I'm
Yeah.
like, hopefully, I'm like communicating this
Yeah, no, you
uh,
totally are. Don't worry,
in a
because
way that makes
I could see
sense.
your face. You're absolutely fine. Don't worry. Yeah, and it, you know, it's funny as well. Like going back to Hassan as well, because what you were talking about with the, you know, what this sets a precedent for. That was the first thing that Hassan tweeted about this, which is like, well, there it is. It's going to be called the Rittenhouse precedent. You know, that now this guy is enabling people to go out and just fucking shoot protesters because he was just looking for a, you know, like I said, I watched fucking Hassan all the fucking time, pretty much every night when he's live, and he was talking about it during the coverage of the trial, in that like, even before, even when it happened, he was covering it, and I remember him saying again and again and again, this guy was looking for a legal kill. And it wasn't even like, so, you know,
Yeah.
you mentioned about, oh, he was looking at, he wanted to look after property. It's definitely more insidious than that, because sure, that's what he painted it as, because that's what the line is, right? That's what right-wing reactionaries want to do. They want to protect capital. That's what cops want to do. They want to protect capital, and that is property. But this guy definitely just wanted to shoot left-wing protesters. Like, he just wanted to attack people who support Black lives. That's what it was all about. You know, you don't get indoctrinated from an early young age into the fold of Blue Lives Matter, and when you look for a legal kill, have that not in your head already. Kind of pretty much anyone who's looked into this can see where that is. You know what I mean? It's like where he's going with this idea. And yeah, I actually like stealth clipped Loner Box, because I wanted to point out how absurd it was, and I think it was just before me and you started chatting. And I had to put it out there, you know what I mean, like how ridiculous this was. And my reach is not what it used to be. A lot of people followed me after I went viral in January, and sadly I don't get that many likes anymore because I'm a bit of a shit poster. But yeah, you know, it's not astounding. It's just like, how the fuck are you justifying this to yourself? Like, really, are you really sat there going like, I'm done, I've beaten racism, and then looking at this with a view of like, yeah, this guy is he's just a poorly misled youth, you know, and we should you know, apologize for him, kind of thing. Because I think even if you don't look at the self-defense thing and just be like, well, even if you do look at the self-defense thing and be like, oh, well, he's defending himself against someone, it's like, yeah, but he like still went out there with this gun. You know, like,
he still went out of his way with a gun to try to stop protesters who are protesting the systemic murder of Black people and
yeah,
thought, and then ended up killing 2 people and injuring another person. And yeah, it's like, again, I understand that I actually do genuinely have like some level of empathy, because like he's a kid,
yeah,
his family is obviously really messed up, and like I think a lot of us have come from messed up families and been like, whoa, that was weird, and we've changed a lot, and like, but I think to me it's like, the anger is like just the situation itself, that like his family thinks it's appropriate to arm their child to like just shoot up a bunch of protesters, like we're just like not even human to them. And also there's like this like myth of like I was reading, so we're reading like George Jackson's Blood in My Eye in our book club,
Yeah.
and someone pointed out that like people don't think that like black people can have a form of like intelligent violence. Like reading Blood in My Eye is like about like violence against the state, and it's really uncomfortable to read because it's like in the US, and it's like how can we have a communist movement in the US? And like it's different from reading like Fanon, because Fanon's talking about Algeria the whole time. So you're like, yeah, like this is Algeria, you're trying to end colonialism, you know,
Mm.
but when I'm reading about the US, I'm like, oh, this is like where I live, this is really extreme, or it feels extreme. But like you're reading it and it's like actually this person's not really talking about violence in a way where it's like excessive. Like this is just like how to end an oppressive state.
Mm.
And it's like when someone in the book club brought up like, yeah, like people don't think that black people are capable of intelligent violence, and white people get that benefit all the time. Like when you hear about like the story of like how, you know, like there's like the Boston Tea Party and da da da
Right.
da, like it's like these people like intelligently were violent, like, or like even like the idea of being a patriot, where it's like in America, it's like, you know, like you have like these patriot soldiers going to fight for like a good fight for a good cause. There's like this intelligent and honorable notion of violence that people of color don't actually get that benefit, where it's like actually there's violence being committed towards property in direct response to systemic murder and brutality of black people. And I do think that is a form of intelligent violence. And Kyle Rittenhouse family like decided to go against that, and in going against that, in killing people who are choosing to protest in this way, or even like emotionally react in this way, they are still seen as like these unintelligent thugs. You know, not necessarily like the people he killed, but like the reason why he was there, which is like the people who were you know, like there is, I think he came down there because property was being damaged. And it's like, okay, so like people protesting like the murder of black people, the violence they commit is still seen as just being thugs. But as a white
Yes.
person and as a white conservative, like he can like be armed with a gun and then kill two people and then injure another person, and it's seen as actually this good thing. And like that assumption's already there because it's baked into the kind of society that into the racist society we're in. And then for people to not understand, because people are like, well, this isn't white supremacy, he killed two white people. It's like, yeah, he killed two white people who are protesting the murder of black people. And because they're protesting the murder of black people, they are guilt by association of being associated with black people, which is
Yeah.
already racist. Like they are seen as like these thugs, these horribly, horribly violent people, as opposed to people who are saying, hey, stop murdering black people. They don't get that benefit, but Kyle Rittenhouse does. And it's the principle of these things that is so messed up. And the fact that like people on the left cannot see that, it's just like, I literally cannot anymore.
Yeah.
I can't be on LeftTube and see the word da 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 da, can't say it, trend, because like Vosh or something Vosh and Destiny, you know, said something. And
Mm.
so now everyone has to come and talk about whatever the heck, like these mostly white, I know like Hassan isn't white, and I'm glad that he sounds like less problematic, but it's just like, we just constantly have to like focus our attention on these like insecure white dudes who
Yeah.
don't know what the heck they're talking about. Anyways, I'm ranting again,
No,
but
rants are great. Like honestly, like I'm really enjoying them because I agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I think that's really pertinent that you pointed out that this was like a punishment, because I agree with that. I agree with in terms of because he was sending a message to other white people when he did that. He was like, if you're a white person and you're allied with black people, with BIPOC individuals, then this is what's going to happen to you. And this is, you know, and obviously that's the message that he wanted to do. It, you know, it's so fucking insidious. And I do want to go back to what you were saying earlier about riots, because you said I think did you say, oh, I don't like the term riot. The term riot is actually fine and stuff like that. I can't remember what you said about that.
I said, but like my sentiment about riots is that like I actually don't have an issue with people rioting in response to the systemic murder of Black people.
Yeah.
It's like it's especially after reading The Wretched of the Earth, like people are like, well, basically there's like this sentiment where it's like you can't lash out when you are being systemically oppressed, and I think that is bullshit. I think it's like
It ties into
Kimberly
exactly
Jones.
what you were saying, doesn't it? It ties into what you were saying about how there's an idea that Black people are incapable of intelligent violence, right?
Right. And I think the main thing is like people care more about their property being damaged than
Mm,
the murder of Black people. So yeah, if your property getting damaged will be the only thing that gets the government to listen, then maybe listen so that way it doesn't lead to getting someone's attention, like property damage or something like that. If you care so much about your property, the best thing you can do for your property is to stop the systemic murder and brutality of Black people.
yeah, this is what I've been thinking about for a while when it comes to arguments like that. Whenever I've heard arguments about like, oh well, they shouldn't be rioting and stuff like that, because that was the big kind of argument that I saw mostly on the on
Right.
Twitter and stuff. It's like, oh well, if they didn't want to do this, they shouldn't have been rioting. And it's like, hang on a minute, like it's kind of tone policing, right? It's like,
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, like, do what we say is okay for you to do. And it's like, well, what do what
You want me to
use,
hand out flyers? Like,
right,
fuck off. Like,
right,
obviously, this has not worked. And you know what's
yeah,
messed up is like people keep on saying, like, I'm sorry, I'm getting so heated. Like, people keep on being like, well, MLK, Martin Luther King didn't riot. You know what? They weren't going to pass any of the Civil Rights Act anytime soon. And then MLK was murdered, and then they burned America for 6 days.
yeah,
For 6 days, America was on fire, and then they're like, "Okay, we'll pass these civil rights acts." So don't stop telling me that we just need to do what MLK did, because that was not actually going anywhere. And even
right,
MLK towards the end of his life was being like, "This is not going anywhere," and then he was killed, and then people rioted. So it's like this is something that's also like a historical response. It's a historical response also when you just look at colonialism across the world, and people people need to really put the focus on, instead of policing how people respond to oppression, let's put the focus on ending the oppression itself, and then you won't have people lashing out in whatever way, because people will actually not be systemically oppressed.
yeah, yeah. That's exactly it, isn't it? And it's yeah, it's Kwame Ture talks about the difference between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X in that regard, isn't it? It's like, Malcolm X was not only, I think he said, organized, but also mobilized the people.
Hmm.
But his criticisms of MLK were exactly the same as you. Is that, like, yeah, it was kind of like, well, black people have tried being polite. They tried being polite and doing things the MLK way. So yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I also do really love MLK. Like I think there's a way where like MLK and Malcolm X are pitted against each other.
Oh,
And I
that's
know that they
totally
had issues.
rubbish. Yeah.
Yeah, I know they had issues with each other, but also like they were fighting the same fight. And like
Yeah.
I there are things that I really agree with both. So I just want to like say that for the record, because like I think MLK is very inspiring as well. But what I don't like is how white people weaponize MLK, because the way they often
Yeah.
weaponize MLK is like not really accurate to what historically has happened, and also not ever accurate to MLK's belief. Like MLK believed in a peaceful means, but he also was like not mincing words about the horrors of racism and also the frustration around white people.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And yeah, I want to echo exactly what you said about riots. Like, this is something I've been thinking about a lot, because it's like, how the fuck? Well, I've already said this. It's like tone policing. Um,
Yeah.
and again, this goes back to, because when people say riots, they don't really mean riots. When people say riots, they mean, oh well, someone set a target on fire, right? That's not really a riot. Like, a riot implies, when you say the word riot to someone, it implies chaos. Like, nothing you know, and it goes back to exactly what you're saying about the idea that black people are incapable of intelligent violence. It sort of like says, oh my God, all this stuff is happening. People are getting beaten up, dragged out of their places of work and stuff like that. And, oh, you know, it's like a pearl clutching moment, isn't it? It's like, oh my God, there's a riot. But when you think about it really in actual fact, it's like, well, actually, no. People have gone, yeah, this is how we get attention. It's exactly how you said. And we can go back to how the Wet'suwet'en people are basically, you know, if you want to define violence by damaging property of a corporation, then that's what they're doing as well. They've literally stolen cat vehicles, you know. Well, you know, stolen is a bad term, but it's like, yeah, they've commandeered you know, large vehicles that are used to build roads and stuff like that, and they've taken them and used them for their own means, which is protecting their land. And it's like, well, you could say that that's happening there as well, but actually that's incredibly effective. What they've done there is working, and it's getting attention, and people, it's not getting enough attention, but it's certainly getting the attention. It's starting to get the attention of sort of people on the fringes of the online left, you know, like me and other people. So it's like, if that is what needs to be done for progress to happen, then what's the problem with this implied idea about a riot? And I think the only problem is this vernacular understanding of riot as a term. It's like people running around in a mosh pit and just like punching each other randomly. You know what I mean? That's what people think.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And I also do want to point out that, like, because like it's also like there are like people do also just like loot because they want something, and it might not even be like directly in form of protest. But Kimberly Jones like points out this really just important thing where she talks about how just like Black people like just like in like racist America for hundreds of years, Black people haven't been able to own anything. Black people haven't been able to create their own wealth. And she talks about like, so like when Black people have rioted and they do like take a TV or something like that, why are there Black people who are so poor where they feel like the only way that they can get something is to like walk through the broken glass of a door and get something? And I think all these things where it's like, okay, like this is also a result of like extreme poverty in so many cases where there are riots.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like, why? And again, it's like, I feel like when I hear about places rioting, there's like, it's like cases of like extreme poverty, cases of people not being listened to about trying to kindly talk to these governments about murder, systemically murdering Black people. And there's a point where people are fed up. And so like one way that they can express themselves being fed up is rioting or looting and just being like, I don't care. But then I think the important questions to ask are like, why do people who are, especially people who are poor, not care? And Kimberly Jones was saying like, people are like, oh, well, you're destroying your own neighborhoods. And Kimberly Jones is like, no, this isn't our neighborhood, because we don't own anything. That how Black people don't own anything in these neighborhoods. So, like, why should I care, or why should other Black people care if they break the window of your Target, break the window of your Walmart? Like, why should people care if this is something that actually gets? If people can just have a moment where they can take what they want, and where they also are just being like, I need you to stop killing people, and this is why we're lashing out in this way. Like, I'm not trying to say that like people should just do whatever they want, but I want people to think about the extreme scenarios that like so many of these Black people are in. Like, why are Black people in these extreme cases of poverty? It comes back down to racism. Why are people reacting in this way? Because again, even though I don't always think, because like I do think there are ways where people riot in a way where it actually is like a form of like we're being very strategic. But there's also a way where people, I do think, riot because they're just lashing out. And I want to even like defend that too, and be like, listen, instead of judging people and finger wagging at them, ask yourselves like, why are people who are like in extreme cases of poverty looting? Why are they in these extreme cases of poverty in the first place? And why are they reacting to systemic oppression in this way? Stay focused on that systemic oppression.
Yes.
it's the villains here are not like poor Black people who are looting. Okay, like
Mm-hmm.
it's been these like economic systems that have just like shit on Black people for hundreds of years, and then also the system that continues to kill these people. So that's
Yes.
also what I want to say about that.
And you touched upon this before, but it really comes down to the fact that white people's um, version of lashing out is to lash out against marginalized individuals that they are getting told aren't behaving in the way that they should be behaving, right? So it's like, instead of, because the video that made me go viral, right, was when I just basically pointed out very simply that, like, so there was a guy at the January 6th insurrection who had a video game tattoo, right? It was like a Dishonored symbol, right? And there was some fucking idiot on Twitter who was saying it was a hammer and sickle. And so obviously I pointed that out, and then we were talking in the chat about how, like, the gamer to fascist pipeline works so well because, generally speaking, if you are a gamer and you're a white guy, you are probably gaming to escape from something. And if you are gaming to escape from reality, which is actually very shit, in different ways for white people, like, for example, like poverty affects white people, right? And so, like, if you hate your life because you don't really have any sort of achievable dreams, or you're just like really having a shit time, you're still living with your parents because you can't afford to move out because no one's paying you enough to do anything, then why aren't you lashing out at capitalism rather than marginalized individuals? Well, that's because, again, it's the media fucking telling you that your problems are all because these Black people won't behave in the way that they're supposed to, or these trans people won't behave in the way they're supposed to, or queer people are being too loud and proud about things. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, you can simply, like, it's so absurd, because it's like, if you're mad about the fact that Black people and their allies are going out and burning targets or whatever, you can actually, like, stop all that happening by helping them. Like, you can stop that happening by fucking getting behind the cause and doing it. But instead, it's like this continued idea that, like, we've got to fight back against that stuff. It's horrific white supremacist conditioning. It's really insidious, because it's, a lot of it isn't said out loud. It's kind of how, like, crypto fascists operate. It's like, they don't like people who are, like, literally Sieg Heiling and wearing swastikas and stuff anymore, because that's too much. That's too obvious, right? It's too obvious, and that's kind of where the media is going with their white supremacy, and it's all it's been going on for much longer than the Black Lives Matter protests of last year and stuff. It's this sort of, like, I think the actual fascists are now cutting in onto the fact that the media portrayal of marginalized individuals is the more effective, because it seeps into people without them even realizing it, because of the preconditioning that happens in society to white people to make them this way, to make them apathetic, in the biggest way towards marginalized people. So, like, and that is just really why we're at where we're at with the online left as well. Again, it's coming back to that, and it's like, how many fucking people are having a conversation like this? Like, how many people are actually, like, talking about this stuff? I'm hearing some people talk about it, sure, but it's not as prevalent as it should be. And
yeah, I do think a lot of BIPOC people are, but it's like, whatever is considered like the mainstream online left, it's
right,
just
yeah,
not happening.
that's what I mean. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it's like, okay, how, again, I'm just sort of, like, sat there getting mad, because it's like, like, I'm hearing you get mad, and I'm like, yeah, fucking definitely, like, get, have a fucking rant about this, because it's so stressful. It's so fucking annoying. Like, I just cannot believe that we have had to, even have the conversation where it's like there's people who are calling themselves leftists who think that Kyle Rittenhouse is just a small poor boy who, needs to be looked after and swaddled and whatnot. Yeah. So yeah, fucking absolutely horrific. We've talked about a lot. And I think we're about 2.5 hours in. Are you? Is there anything that you want to bring up that we've not brought up already, or?
That's probably it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Not that comes to mind. Yeah, I'll probably get going. But I really had fun talking, and I'm glad that we got the chance to just kind of just talk and hang out.
Yeah. I honestly really enjoyed it, and it's definitely meaningful. It's been a really meaningful conversation to me. I think a lot of people in the chat have appreciated it as well. What are you working on next?
I've been working on this Dave Chappelle video for like a while.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm just like, I get like these really intense mental blocks where like I have a hard time finishing videos, but I'm working on that. That's gonna for sure be the next video I post, and one day I will make this video on whiteness. I also got very just discouraged because I was like, wow, like if I talk about whiteness, are people gonna like, because like I talked about self-determination and people are like, she wants a genocide. And I'm like, well, if I talk about whiteness, are people gonna be able to handle that, or am I gonna get canceled again?
Right.
So I've just kind of been thinking about that. I don't think so, but I really want to make that video, and people keep on talking about critical race theory, and whiteness is a very huge part of that. So it's like definitely feels extra relevant, and I would love to get that out. But yeah, next video is going to be on Dave Chappelle and just on the special that he had. That was honestly just some fucking bullshit.
Well, how much time have you got? Because I don't mind you staying on as long as you want, if you want to talk to us about that, or just a very brief cliff notes on what you think about that.
Yeah, I'll give some I'll try to make it cliff notes, but like
no, you could be honestly as long as you want.
Well, yeah, I don't know how much you know, but I guess I'll just like do a summary for the audience. So Dave Chappelle had a special, super transphobic. It's really funny because people are like, oh, well, did you watch the special? Did you watch it? And I was like, I read an article about it, but fine, I'll watch it. And they're like, yeah, well, if you watch it, it's not that at all. I watched it. It was so much worse than anything that I had read. It was so messed up. Like, he basically has a friend called Daphne, and she killed herself, and he basically blames her suicide on trigger warning. I'm sorry. This is very this trigger warning about suicide and transphobia. She is trans, and she kills herself, and he blames her suicide on getting online harassment from the trans community. And he also like misgenders her, makes fun of her for being trans, but it's like, oh, it's all in good love because she's my friend. And basically it's really gross because white people do this all the time where they'd be like, oh, I'm not racist, I have a black friend. And Dave is doing this, but with transphobia, being like, I'm not transphobic, I have a trans friend. It's so disgusting. And then the cherry on top is that you find out that she didn't get the harassment that Dave paints. Like, Dave was like, oh, like, I don't know why else she would have killed herself except for the online harassment she got. Well, someone used like the time machine that you have, not the time machine, but we can go back in time and just like see what that day looked like. So she didn't get online harassment, and her comment about Dave Chappelle got a lot of likes, and then a lot of people were being supportive and being like, that's great. There was like 12 comments, 9 or 12 comments or something like that. There wasn't that many. So that harassment that Dave Chappelle is claiming didn't even happen. And then also her friends came out and were like, yeah, she lost custody of her child, and that is really what pushed her over. So he's just making this up. And so like this video is really just being like, just talking about how messed up that was, but then also just talking about trans representation. And also there are a lot of Black people who don't get how transphobic it is. And generally I don't try to convince people. I just am kind of like, here's what I think, you can take it or leave it. But I am going to try to like call in Black people who don't, because like there are also a lot of Black people who get how transphobic this is, but like I saw this blow up in a lot of groups I'm in a lot of groups on Facebook. And yeah, when this special came out, it really divided a lot of those groups. And it was honestly like, it shouldn't have been that controversial in my opinion. This is just, it's so transphobic. It's so, and then just even like to do that to a friend, like hide behind your friend's suicide. Like, just how dare you? Like it's so disgusting, but that's what my video is going to be on. It's going to go over that. I just have had these mental blocks around it because I don't want to like misspeak. And so then I like get anxious and then I end up just kind of like staring at the page for like a long time instead of writing the script. So
right. Yeah, it's and did you hear about when he went to that school?
Yeah. Like all these high schoolers were like, "Yo, you are being fucked up." And then he's like, "Well, I'm more successful than all of you." And it's like, what? Who says that to a group of high schoolers? First off, Dave, they're in high school. Of course, you being this famous comedian are more successful. But also, secondly, like, how sad is that you have to tell off a bunch of high schoolers who are trying to hold you accountable, rightly so, for being fucked up? Like, that was sad and also kind of funny.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's why I brought it up, because it is really like that kind of sort of shows you what kind of person Dave Chappelle is when he's talking about this stuff, right? It's like, so he thinks he's really good. He has a really egotistical kind of, view of himself. And therefore nothing that he can do is wrong. So it's like, well, that kind of explains why he thinks it's okay to just completely make up this fabricated version of his trans friend. And for all we know, like, how friendly were they? Did they go around to each other's house every day for a cup of tea, or did they just hang out when they were doing the comedy circuit together, right? Which is what it's more likely has happened, kind of thing. I don't know much about Dave Chappelle.
Well, that's what it sounds like. And then after she died, like, her family didn't hear from Dave,
right?
And so it was just like, he didn't call and so it just really seems like he is using this person's death. And, it sounds like, from what I have heard, it sounds like Daphne really did admire Dave Chappelle, did think that his trans jokes were funny. And so that is like, sad to hear, but it's also like, that part is genuine. But what isn't genuine is like, saying that she got harassed to death and blaming it on the trans community. What isn't genuine is like hiding behind her death. Like, that's really not okay to do. And her friends have come out and be like, that's really messed up. Like, her family actually has been like, oh, like, we still love Dave. And so, like, good for them. But her friends who are also trans are like, yeah, like, I think that was traumatizing for them. And that in itself is like just really manipulative, inconsiderate, and it's just not okay. This is like, it's not how you treat people that you care about.
No, not in the slightest. And of course, I'm a Hassan simp, so I'm going to bring up what Hassan said again, because he is a big fan of Dave Chappelle.
Maybe I should watch Hassan.
Give him a watch. Give him a watch. Because the thing is that, like, I would love someone to chat to who I could talk to about Hassan and be like, yeah, you know what, like, he said this, and I just, like, I don't know if he's, like, right about that and stuff. Because I just don't think, like, that many people, he's not held accountable by anyone. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, so there are some things where it's like, he could have said that a bit different. You know what I mean? Or like, he could have like framed that a little bit different or whatever. So it'd be good to knock heads on that. Not knock heads, but like put our heads.
We just have someone to chat with about.
Yeah. Check him out, because, well, the thing is that, like, so Hassan is a Dave Chappelle simp. Like, said that he loves Dave Chappelle, like, loves his comedy, like, always watches specials and stuff like that. And he was like, you could see it in his face. He like really wanted to be like, I love Dave Chappelle and shit like this. And he was like, I just can't even bring myself to say that any of this was good. It was like a boomer talking about trans people.
Yeah.
It's just like this really embarrassing.
No one needs that.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, even like big fans of Dave Chappelle, can sit there and be like, this is fucked. You know that it's like, yeah, this guy's he's just dropped off. Do you know what I mean? He's just fully dropped off. So that's really good. I'm gonna be looking forward to that. That's gonna be great. That's certainly gonna be great. And you said that you're also gonna make this video on whiteness.
Yeah, I've been talking about that for a very long time, and yeah,
Because the critical
it's
race
just
theory,
like,
I've seen you tweet about that like a couple of times, like today,
yeah,
and
CRT is like my jam, which is funny because I need to like make a video on CRT. Like,
yeah.
it's like it is like my jam. It's messed up because when I did the debate with um Bosch, I'm like, should I say his name or not? I don't anyway, but
You can
'cause I'm
say it
like,
here,
he
don't
who will
worry.
not be named. But when I had that debate, I like was talking about colonialism, and like I only know some things about colonialism. Like I've happened to read Franz Fanon, and um I've just like read some stuff here or there. And I definitely am trying to read more, which is why I am like reading books about it in my book club, but like I
Mm.
don't want to be an educator on it at the moment because I am learning so much more. But when it comes to critical race theory, I like it is definitely like an area that I really want to be educational in because um it really is just history and like talking about how that history affects us. And yeah, there's like so much to go over in there, like a wealth of understanding that it leads to. I honestly think if people just started off learning that, then white people wouldn't be so defensive because it's just like, yeah, this is just our history. Let's deal with it. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna make a video on whiteness, and I might do that right after the Dave Chappelle one. Hopefully, we'll see.
Fuck yeah, yeah, that'd be great because, well, Count Jacula's literally just asked in the chat, what do you think most well-meaning people don't understand about CRT?
I think people legitimately don't get that it's historical. Like I've been seeing people, so like Republicans are like, it just teaches us that, it teaches our kids that that white people are inherently racist. It's like, well, that's not really true. Like CRT is like, yeah, this country is racist, and this is the country that we live in, or a country that like many of us live in. Um, and it doesn't have to be like explicitly about America, but I mean, a lot of the world is racist. So like, but it really is going over like the history and being like, this is how it's affecting us in racist ways. And and then on the other hand, people who are well-meaning, like I've heard people be like, yeah, CRT is only taught in law school. I've read like multiple articles saying this. I've like watched videos on CRT people saying this, and it's just really bizarre because I actually took a CRT class in college, and
Ah,
it's not that much different from your average class on racism. You know,
yeah,
a lot of people have to take classes on racism because they have, they have to fulfill some sort of general ed requirements, and so like a class on racism falls under a certain something that you can take to fulfill a requirement for gen ed or something. CRT isn't that. I can't really even like think of what the difference is. I took a class on racism and a class on critical race theory. I think the only difference is like when I took a class on critical race theory, when I took the class on racism, there was a lot of white people in that class, and I was really worried they're going to be like, "This is not real." But they were actually all like very understanding, and like we actually had these really cool group discussions. And I wish I had like reached out and become friends with everyone. And when I took a class on critical race theory, very similar thing, like, except for there were definitely more people of color in that class who are just like, wow, like, I experienced so much racism. Like, what is happening? Like, why? Why are white people so like vitriol and just so like constantly lashing out at us when we talk about racism? And learning about CRT helped us understand like the context of America and be like, oh, okay, like this is what's going on. But it really wasn't that much different from your average class on racism, which again goes over like the history of why we are where we are right now. Like it
mm,
goes over like and like talking about like the New Deal era acts and how that very much helped white people, but explicitly didn't help Black people. Talking about the GI Bills, how that helped white people, but did not help Black people and prevented them, from those resources. Talking about redlining, how like white people had literal access to buying houses, but Black people did not. And how like all these things accumulated into forming a white middle class, and
yeah.
it just prevented resources from Black people. Like, and it just goes over that stuff historically. And then it's like, oh, okay. So like basically you have these like really important, impactful events that happened in history where white people are forming a middle class that is exclusive to people of color, particularly to Black people. and that was literally our parents.
Mm,
Like, it was
yeah.
like literally just like not that long
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
And then like not even our grandparents, like this happened in our parents' lifetime.
Mm,
And you're like, yeah, like I think I get why like we're still struggling with racism. And like that's really all it is. And so like I learned a lot of like really important thing cuz like people know about the GI bills, but they don't understand like how racist it was. People know about the New Deal era, but they don't understand how racist it was. And then people just don't even know about redlining. And redlining is probably like one of the biggest things that happened
yeah.
to perpetuate racism actually, and
Mm,
also solidify the white middle class. Like those, pretty much any time the white middle class has been solidified, it has been at the expense of people of color, particularly Black people. And so it's really just looking at the other half that's been taught. We've learned about how like the white middle class is formed. What we didn't hear about is the racist effects that had on Black people. And it seems like a side note, but it's actually like literally like why things are still so fucked up. And
right.
yeah, so I just want to make videos on that and just be educational. Um,
Well, that's
but
great. I mean,
yeah,
I've learned something because I was under the impression that it was only taught in law schools. So that's really good to know. And
yeah,
here's
I don't know where that came from because
right.
that's just
I
yeah.
heard oh Jesus, who was the
But
first?
it shows like how little people know because even people defending critical race theory are saying this, and I'm like, this just isn't actually like true.
Yeah.
But I thought it was like really interesting.
Yeah, it's because here's the thing. It's like I remember when I didn't know much about it, and all I knew was what Republicans were saying about it, which was like, oh yeah, they're going to be teaching our kids in school that white people are racist, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty based. Like I'm fine with that. Like, so I
Right.
wasn't
Like
ever that.
the boogeyman is actually okay, like they're gonna teach that our kids are racist. And it's like, well, that's not the worst thing in the world. But
Yeah,
it's not even that. It's like
no,
here's history and here's how it's affected us.
yeah.
So let's deal with it.
Yeah, so yeah, it's I was never even that bothered about it anyway, so the fact that like someone said to me it was only being taught in law schools anyway, I was like, I don't care either way really, you know what I mean? Like I think it should be fucking
Mhm.
taught in school, like why the hell not? But yeah, that's really fucking good to know. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be checking that out. And you're right, it's a boogeyman. It's like, oh my god, critical race theory, holy shit. Like it's everyone's gonna find it. It comes back to exactly what we were talking about before, which is that white people are just scared to be called racist. And it's like, oh my god, get over yourself. Like just have an opportunity to learn. And you know
It's not it's something that's weird because it's like that's not the deal. That's not necessarily like the deal breaker for me, is like the reality that the vast majority of white people I meet struggle with racism. The
mm.
deal breaker is when I'm like, hey, you did this thing and it seems very racist and it's hurt me. When white people are like, whoa, 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 like this isn't racist. You're being reverse racist. That's the deal breaker. It's not the fact that people struggle with this, at least for me. And I think for some people, they don't even want to mess with white people because it is so painful. But I think for
Yeah,
a lot of people, like the deal breaker isn't actually that people are racist. It's like when you're like, hey, this has hurt me, and then you get attacked because you're expressing that something has hurt you.
yeah,
And it's all just like really sad because I think like for me, like I talk about racism because I actually want to be connected to people. But I can't because people are hurt. It's too painful being around people when they lash out at you in these ways
mm.
constantly, or just basically just gaslight you and be like, well, this isn't happening. You're like, no, this is happening. But I'm saying this because I actually want to be connected with people. And some people don't want to be connected, and that's fine. Because I also think I put myself in these positions where I do get hurt by white people a lot, but I just want white people. Maybe I don't know if this is helpful for white people to hear that people are pointing out racism because I think a part of it is like wanting to be connected to you, like wanting to find that common humanity where
Yes.
we're like, well, we're all human, and you're like, okay, that's true, and I would like to like share that sentiment with you, and I would like to enjoy that reality with you, but I can't extend my hand because whenever extend my hand, I get slapped, and then it's like, and then you call it reverse racism. So it's like I would actually very much like to. I do say all this because I would like to work together with others. And so I don't know if that's helpful for white people to hear, where it's like people are telling you that they're hurt because, even possibly because they want to be able to not just work with you, but like be friends with you. But it's
Right.
like the tragedy is that like you really, like, you come for so many Black people, they either already have come to that point or eventually come to that point where they realize, like, I need to actually distance myself from white people because there so many of them are not gonna get it, and it's just been very painful.
Mm. And that is really the most horrific part about it. It's you know, when I think about the influence that like Black people have had on my life, in terms of like the ones that have been really close to, like, you know, my best friend for a long time, like you know, he was a Black guy, and he's sadly moved to Spain now. He's, you know, he's not stopped being my best friend. I just don't see him enough. And it's like the joy of, like, you know, learning about his culture and his heritage and shit like that, you know, that's like fucking sick. Do you know what I mean? To be involved in that, and like, you know, just sort of like why the fuck do more people not want to like learn about that? It's exactly like you said. It's like, it's so stressful because it's like, you know, you could see, like, I think that some white people can see that it's like when Black people engage people in racism and stuff, and that they want to be friends with them. But a lot of them, like you say, it's just too fucking much for them. They're just like, oh, fucking, you know, yeah. So that really sucks. And you know, sending you like a lot of love, and you know, hopefully healing that you can do regarding putting yourself on the line like that, because I have no idea how that must be. You know, in terms of fucking like putting yourself out there like that and getting slapped down. Like, when I saw the shit that happened to you with the fucking debate that you went on, like, I was just like, how can you be so fucking obtuse, you know, in this idea? This is like day one stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like day one stuff of, like, you know, how not to be a racist, innit? Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, you can't say that like some like Black nationalists or the land back movement or anything like that is as bad as white supremacy. It's just, you know, like, how did you not like learn that like straight away? It's just fucked. It's really fucked.
Oh, the messed up thing about that particular thing is like he just I think he just like mixed up terms and didn't because like he mixed up Black nationalism with Black separatism and
Right.
didn't realize that he had done that. And then that got pointed out, but then he just like acted like it didn't happen. But then I made a video being like, hey, like, no. Like, there are still people in your audience saying Black nationalism is evil because you mixed up these terms and never properly explained what they are.
Yeah.
So, and then he just was like, he just, instead of being like, oops, yeah, like I didn't really explain these things very well and it led to a lot of misinformation that like made things more hostile for Black people, he just like dug his heels in. And so that debate that we had was kind of like the peak of that peak of digging in those heels of being like, oh, I'm justified in my concerns because y'all are trying to make an ethno state, aren't you? You're trying to make an ethno state. I'm like, no one's trying to make an ethno state. I'm just trying to say that you don't understand nationalism or separatism, at least as far as Black nationalism, separatism. And like, you're misrepresenting them and like you don't really need to be hostile actually to either of these people. Even if I have a lot of issues with a lot of separatists, there's like ways that you're like, you know, being scared of them in a way that you don't have to be, but especially
Yep.
Black nationalism, because that's just a liberation movement.
Exactly.
And then self-determination is not a Nazi phrase. It's literally like respected by the UN. And it's like just like the basis for like, okay, people in general should have self-determination and indigenous people have not gotten it. So like, what does that look like,
Yeah.
considering that all these indigenous people have been colonized? Like, it's just ridiculous. It was so ridiculous, but it was like I expected it to be ridiculous, but like to that degree of like 2 months of just like debate bros, like just like demanding that I answer for something that I never said and also have never believed.
Yeah.
And then like just being like, I was like, that changed me. I was like, you know what? I really need to not be around white people. Like, I feel like I like had that lesson so many times like, especially as someone who was adopted and grew up around white people. But then I was like, I like just remember being like, yeah, I really messed up by just like being around white people. Like once again, like,
Yeah.
oops. So
Mm-hmm. And you
yeah.
know what? It's so interesting in the fact that you remember that the heels getting dug in when he was pointed out that he was wrong, because that is that toxic masculinity we were talking about before. That is that, like, you know, because you hear about frame shit. You hear people talk about the frame. Like, don't let your frame be broken. You know what I mean? And that's what it's all about. Like these fucking that's what debate bros are all about. They're all about, like, never let anyone break your frame, never let anyone prove you wrong. You're right, and that's it. It doesn't matter if because it really doesn't matter if these people are right or wrong to them, because it's about the spectacle. Yeah, so all they care about is just going point, and it's sophistry. It's gish galloping. It's just, you know, I'm gonna grind you down to the point where you can't be bothered to fucking debate me anymore. And it's just, and
Right.
that's what it all is. So, like, even if someone gets, yeah, fucking, that's absolutely ridiculous that, like, Vord is pointing out in the chat, never play defense, because that is a video.
Right.
But
That's where I messed up. Where I
what?
was like trying to answer these questions and I was like not on the offensive. And I should have been like,
Yes.
hey, why are you doing like why are you saying this? But I shouldn't have. Well, I don't want to say like I shouldn't have debated him to begin with. Like I wouldn't do it again, but I
Yeah.
don't regret it. I don't regret it because also like people saw that and were like, why is this person like telling a black person that they're genocidal because they're talking about like self-determination? Like it so I don't know. There was some utility in it, but it's definitely a mixed bag.
Mm.
But yeah, like don't I came in there like thinking I was gonna like talk about all these things, and then I ended up just like defending a bunch of stuff that I honestly just wasn't even prepared to even talk about. Um, yeah, and
Well,
I
they
think one of
never
the messed up
play.
things.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I think like one of the messed up things, like going back to like, your frame and don't let it like, you can't like show like any signs like weakness. Like
Mm.
it's not the best word, but it's just like what's coming to mind.
Yeah.
Like for me, people thought I was genocidal because he kept on being like, well, what about genocide? And I'd be like, I'm not talking about genocide. I'm talking about the right to self determination. And a lot of times when people end colonialism, that unfortunately happens violently because they're left with no other choice. And so like there was like these scenarios that Vosh was giving me where he was saying that it was genocide. And I was like, well, I've it seems like people have when they've ended colonialism, like have done these forms of violence. And so I'm like, well, I can't really also say that like it's wrong. So I'm like, well, I'm just gonna leave it at like people should have their own self-determination and people should I'm gonna leave it to colonized people because like they kind of know what to do best in their situation. And so that's why I said that. I said that because I wasn't actually so when I looked all this stuff up after, like the scenarios where Vosh was being like, "This is genocide," I looked up this stuff, and it wasn't like considered genocide or an ethnic cleansing.
Yes,
Like
that's right.
Vosh was just saying that so that way he'd be like, "You're so evil, like you're endorsing genocide." And I withheld from having an opinion at the time of the debate because I'm like, I'm not actually sure if these things constitute that. And I'm not
Mm.
really sure, like I'd have to like look at real life examples. But in general, the examples that I do know of, people have ended colonialism with violence. And then once it was over, they backed off because they didn't want revenge. They just wanted colonialism to end. And I don't really want to like tell them that that's like right or wrong because they were in a very extreme situation. Like not that like America isn't being colonized now, but like when people actually fight against colonialism, it's a very like and it's a very like the fact people shouldn't be in that situation at all.
Yeah.
And I really don't believe it's like my place to judge how people have ended that. But anyways, I was reserving having an opinion because I was like, I am not sure. Like I don't actually know. And people were like, but you won't say, which means you want a white genocide. And
Mm.
I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is so wild to me right now. Like this is
Mm.
so wild. And it was thousands of people. And it's like I expected things to be messed up, but like that was like a whole other level where I was just like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
I am trying to speak carefully on a topic that I honestly like don't know much about. So I'm trying to like reserve having an opinion and just speak carefully. And because I am doing that, like because I'm not like giving like a yes or no answer to these really complicated subject matters, like you think that I want a white genocide and this is seriously happening, and it went on for months and it's still happening. Like I still get people being like, why do you want to hurt white people? And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I can't believe this is like continuing to happen. And I'm just like, but it's like also just so racist. Like it's not just like rude,
Yes.
it's just like it is so racist that you thought that it was appropriate to paint a Black person talking about ending colonialism and just talking about self-determination. That's it. It is so racist for you to paint that person as like a genocidal maniac or someone
Yeah.
who also wants an ethnic cleansing. Like that is so racist. And then people like came to my defense, but they didn't understand how racist it was. They're like, oh, like this is bad faith, this is disingenuous. And I'm like, this is racist. And I was like, even with like seeing the white people who defended me, I was like, I was like, holy cow, like they don't get that this is really racist. And I was like, even that's when I was like, okay, like I am on my own, because like even though people are defending me, they also don't understand like how, like why this is so egregious. And
Yes.
I really am like on my own. But then like random Black people on Twitter were like, this is racist. But it was random Black people on Twitter, like they weren't even leftists. It was wild. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling.
No, the rambling
I
is
am
good.
probably getting.
Do not apologize. Please don't apologize.
Okay.
Because, you know, that's the last thing. I would never ask you to stop rambling or anything. It's great because, you know, and it's great. It's funny that when I said the never play defense thing, that you immediately went to, oh, well, I shouldn't have done that, because that's what they drag people into. What I was going to say is that what Vordrella in the chat was referencing there, the Never Play Defense video from Innuendo Studios, that is the from the alt-right
Oh my gosh,
playbook.
I know what video you're talking about.
Yeah. So...
You're right!
That
what?
Is,
yeah!
that
why are they doing stuff from the alt-right playbook? You know?
Mm-hmm. And it's that simple, really, when it comes down to it, because then again... it's that, and you said something before that made me think about Gamergate again, and it was right. So like, that idea that there are Black people out there who want a white genocide and like want to like hashtag kill all white men kind of thing is like, that's straight out of Gamergate. Like that was a whole thing that like, you know, because that's where I got, remember I was talking about before, I was like, wait, they can't fight racism with racism nonsense. Because that's what I remember seeing. And that was a straw man. That like literally never happened. Like there was literally a straw man argument that fucking alt-right people made up. They were like, yeah, Black people want to kill all white people. And it's like, hang on, what? And then you do a bit of research into it and it's like, no, they've just created this thing. Like, you know.
Yeah, they just made
Yeah. And so like, and you know, coming back to the thing about the never play defense thing from Innuendo Studios and the idea that they don't want to break their frame, it's like, these motherfuckers are crypto fascists. That's what they fucking are. You know what I mean? They can say that they want socialism as much as they want. They can call themselves libertarian socialists and shit, you know, make this new fucking nonsense shite. But at the end of the day, like, that is what it comes down to, is alt-right Gamergate nonsense. And that's and it's so sad that this is like a thing, because I see people who orbit these channels, you know, who are not like that, and they are obsessed with, again, sort of like the trickle-down economics of doing the drama thing, right? Like doing the fucking drama thing. And it's like, nah, there's no fucking point. Like, just do something else. You know, and these people already have like a big platform, like they go live and they're not talking about this stuff and they have hundreds of viewers. So it's like, so why do you need to talk about like the result of the debate? Because these debates don't have winners or losers. Because at the end of the day, the for party will go away thinking that they won, and the against party will go away thinking that they won. Now that's not what happened with you, because obviously you're not a debate streamer, right? You're just a person that went in to sort of be like, yo, what you're talking about is bullshit, right?
Yeah, like
And
literally all I want
if
to do is be like, "Fuck
oh, hang on, I
you!
think you've
You're
gone
literally
muted there. I don't know if
perpetuating
that's. Oh no, no,
racism."
no. Sorry, that was just me. Sorry, go on. What were you saying?
Oh, okay. I just wanted to be like, "Fuck you! You're literally perpetuating racism," and that's
Right.
actually all I wanted to do. I didn't think it would be that long. Like I thought he was just gonna be like, "Well, fuck you too," and then I
Mm.
would like get kicked off, and then. But yeah,
Well, that's what it is. And
that
the
was
thing is,
the whole thing. I was just like, it was just wild. And then people thought it was about land back, and then so
right?
like I had to go around and be like, listen, land back is not about white genocide either.
Yes.
Like it was so messed up.
Yeah, and that's these people's opinions on movements like that. You know, that's what they think. That's like their fucking shit. They're like, yeah, all this stuff is bad, and that's why it's so horrific. You know, like I said, like you were just someone who went in there to you know actually call them out on their bullshit, which was you know being racist. But that's probably why he kept you on for so long and didn't just kick you out because he thought you were being, you know, a reverse racist. It's because that's the idea. The idea is to perpetuate the argument until it becomes a farce, and that's when you kick someone off, because that's when it's like, oh well, I've gotten as much content as I can out of this person. Do you know what I mean? I've extracted as much value as I possibly can out of this conversation, and that's what it's all about. It's about extracting value. It's about capital, and it's about you know, not pushing fucking boundaries. But I'm sure you knew that, you know, from your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think Vosh and I both wanted the satisfaction of like what like of just like I really wanted to be like, yo, like fuck you, you're being really racist. And I think Vosh wanted to be like, hey, like, see, without a doubt, like you're a genocider. And I think we both got like a really mixed bag where like I didn't really get to say what I wanted to say, and I was like hoping to get the chance to do that. So that's why I stayed on for so long. And then he also I think really wanted to have like that moment where it's like, see, you're we need to be scared of you.
That's what
And
they
he
want.
never
They
really
want the
got
gotcha moment. Yes, yes.
yeah, and he never quite got it. Like definitely his audience was like, you're a genocider. But then a bunch of other people were like, this is really messed up. So we never quite got it. It was like kind of like a weird, probably I'm assuming it was a weird experience for both of us because we neither of us got what we wanted out of it.
Yeah, I think it's probably a weird experience for Vosh because he's never had a BIPOC person on his stream before.
No, he has.
Oh, has he?
Remember that whole remember? So this is what sparked the black nationalist thing, where people were like, "Is black nationalism a bunch of black people who want to kill us?" Like, and it was like literally just like looking it up would just solve. Anyway, so like there was a black nationalist who debated Vosh, and then Vosh got it mixed up with black separatism. And this person was like, no, like this is not what black nationalism is. And then he was released. Like, I think Vosh was like really scared because he was debating a black person and he's like worried about getting canceled. And then Twitter blew up. Twitter blew up with all these people being like, we should be scared of any form of nationalism, which is really wild because like pretty much other than white nationalism, there are all these nationalist like literally the Palestine movement is a nationalist movement.
Right, yeah.
It's like, and it's a liberation movement. It's like, so there's like white, like I honestly think it's like white nationalism co-opted the word nationalism from, or I believe it did because no, it did. This is actually historical. This isn't me like misremembering. They were called white supremacists, you know, still are, but then black nationalism was happening as a movement during the civil rights movement. And they're like, oh, like let's co-opt this terminology so that way we can be more digestible. And so that's why, you know, we have white nationalism now because it's co-opted language. Also, like Vosh is saying that like using the word self-determination is a Nazi talking point. Nazis co-opted that phrase to seem more digestible. Like, you know, similar to like it's the same thing as them being called the alt-right. Most nationalist movements are actually really cool. It's because they're more often than not liberation movements. Like there's literally Irish nationalism. There's Armenian nationalism. All of them are liberation movements. And it's just not really something to be worried about. It's actually something like, and it's really funny because after that they're like, oh, well, you must be against Palestine. All these people were saying that I'm against Palestine And it was so weird because I'm like, that is literally a nationalist movement, you fucking pieces
Yeah.
of shit. But you don't know that it's a nationalist movement because you don't know what nationalism is, which is also why we kind of had this debate in the first place, because none of you know what nationalism is. So there's a panic around this word because none of you have just been around non-white people is what's happening.
That's
It's like
literally it. Yeah.
not that every black person is like familiar with black nationalism or things like that, but it's just like it does seem really weird that, like, especially as a leftist, like there are all the, like, you know, Palestine, like we're all like, yes, Palestine, free Palestine, and it's a nationalist movement, and at the same time leftists are like, I'm scared of nationalism. It's like, look into what, and it's like my videos on Vosh weren't being like, hey, agree with everything that black people say.
Yeah.
It's like, understand what these words mean before responding to them.
Yeah.
And that's really what my videos were about. It's like, you know, have an understanding before being reactive. It was like the TLDR of like my video.
Mm-hmm.
And then I debated Vosh, and people were like, I don't understand what you're saying, I'm scared. And I'm like, wow, okay. But also you know, there's a part of me that like also saw that coming, but like not to the degree that I had experienced that. That still like was really rattling. But
that would have been a really good gotcha moment for you if you'd have turned around to Vosh and been like, oh, right, so you don't like Palestinians then? Because he did like a huge Palestinian fundraiser. Yeah, so that could have been
like,
your
there's
gotcha
like all
moment.
these things like in hindsight where I'm like, wow, I wish I had said this, but I was honestly so unprepared to talk about that.
And that's
like I still am so unprepared. Like I am not the person, like I'm not the person to talk about decolonialism, and I'm definitely learning more about it. I've been reading a lot of books. Oh, and this is why people thought the debate was about land back, because decolonialism was mentioned, but we were talking about African countries.
Right.
But I definitely want to learn more about it because I am very inspired by like all these liberation movements that have happened, because also a lot of them seem tied in with socialist movements too.
Yes.
Like in Tanzania, that happened when they overthrew their colonial powers. Like they were like, and we're gonna, you know, instate socialism. That ended up not succeeding because Nyerere, who was like the leader, died. He died, and when he died, the movement died, unfortunately. But there's just like a lot to learn from these movements.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been trying to learn more about decolonization, and I've been learning more also about like land back, and recently I've been learning a lot about like what's going on in Canada. Canada has like a very you know, not that America doesn't have a land back movement, but like Canada is like really making some progress and like really like just kind of in the trenches.
Yeah.
Not to say that people in America aren't, but it's just like there's a lot of really cool stuff going on there. So, you know, it's just like we should really just understand that we're in a global community. It's like funny because like the online left is very Western centric.
Oh,
and it's like there's so much going on in South America. Like there's so much going on just like in the rest of the world. So I'm just trying to learn more about it.
Totally.
But I'm not the one to be teaching about it or anything. Like I'm just trying to learn more at the moment. So it's just weird that I debated all that.
That's the whole you know, sort of well, that's what they want to do. They want to drag you into a discussion that you know nothing about, so you look like an idiot in it. This is why they say things like, well, what about this? You know, kind of thing.
Right. And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, well, if you don't know, then that means that you're evil or something. And you're like, I'm like, is anyone falling for this? And his audience is like, yeah, you're evil, you're a genocider. I'm like, okay, this is happening. All right.
And it's like that's where the skill is in, you know, if you could call it a skill, because it's not really a skill. It's more like having a high school argument.
It's a skill. It is it is some really good sophistry.
Yeah. Just like, what about this? What about this? Well, if you said that, then you must think this and this, that, and the other. And just a real head fuck. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I just want to ask you, because I was going to upload this to YouTube. Do you want me to cut this bit out, or are you fine with this bit going on?
Oh, I'm fine. I am fine. I actually have a mod and everything. So now, like, whenever like debate bros try to dogpile me, like I literally just will block like 30 people at a time and just and it's been okay. Like, because it's like, it's not that I need to be liked by these people.
No.
And it's not even that I need them to stop making content on me. It's just, it's like having people be like, demand that I answer for something that I haven't said and don't believe. That's the
Yeah.
part where I'm like, wow, like, because it makes me be like, maybe I do want to like genocide people. And then I'll talk to my friends and they'll be like, well, do you want to genocide people? And I'll be like, no, but I just keep on getting so much like, maybe I
Oh,
do.
you got
That's the
gaslighted.
part. That's the part that's like driving me and like really is like making me question myself because it's like people like want me to answer for something that I didn't say and don't believe. And that's too much for me to handle. But if I can just block everyone, then it's actually okay.
Yeah.
And like people will message me and be like, "Oh, Vosh said this about you on stream." And I'm like, "Yep, I'm sure he did." And like I don't need to know because I have Vosh blocked and I have all these people blocked and I'm actually okay. Not that not that it's not frustrating to hear about people who like think so poorly of me, but it's also like blocking them has been the solution. So like
Yeah.
I go ahead and post it. It's like it's not gonna bother me
Sweet.
or anything.
That's great. Yeah. And it is that as well. You know, like I watch a lot of a guy called Limmy, who's a Scottish guy. And he had this motto, and it's called block and move on. And it's just, that's what it is. Like as soon as you do that, and I've actually experimented with mute and move on, because mute and move on can actually be like extra delicious and extra juicy. Because if someone has a go at you on Twitter for saying something that you didn't say, or like, you know, misrepresents your argument, or is just basically being a fucking sea lion, you can respond to them and you can just be like, actually, I never said that. Also, fuck your mum. Also, didn't ask. Plus your white. Plus ratio. And then just mute them. And it drives them fucking crazy. And like, you can see like behind the fucking mute, they're like tweeting about you, and it's delicious.
Yeah.
So like, you know, this is like, I think people like expect that you're gonna respond in the way that they respond to social media, so they try and drag you in this way. And it's like, oh, actually, you know, I'm not going to respond the way that you want me to respond. And it's really interesting. I think like that's how a lot of right wingers attack leftists all the time. In the UK, when Jeremy Corbyn was running for Prime Minister, there was a lot of accusations of anti-Semitism towards him, and they made him apologize for things that he hadn't done so many times. They were like, when are you going to apologize for your anti-Semitism? When are you going to apologize for your anti-Semitism? And he would be there like, having to try and explain that, like, yes, there's been a history of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, but that's not a thing that we do now. But because the way he was represented in the media, he had to answer these questions all the time. And it's like, if you look at any evidence of Jeremy Corbyn being anti-Semitic whatsoever, you just can't find it. It's just not even there. But there are vast swathes of the UK that believe he's fucking literally Hitler, because that's the way the right-wing media was like, you have to apologize for this, you have to apologize. And it's like, for what? For fucking what? You know, really, like, the answer should have been, no, I'm not going to apologize for something I haven't done, you know. But you know, this is it's easier said than done, right? Because, you know, when someone's attacking you in that way.
I think for me, like, it was so like, I made the videos about Vosh because I had known Black people that were like, I hate Vosh because he misrepresents us in these really extreme ways.
Yeah.
And so, like, I kind of was in a community that, like, I was like, I honestly was trying to defend them, actually, which is funny because people are like, well, you're a separatist. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just trying to say, like, you don't understand what this is. This is what it actually means.
Yeah.
And but anyways, like, I think I've been surrounded by people who just are like, yeah, this person's a problem, like, before I had said anything. And then my other friends too were like, when this all happened, they were like, they didn't really bat an eye. Like, I was so scared that all my friends are going to be like, you're genocidal. And all my friends were like, God, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. Like, this happened to someone else we know who talked with Vosh, and this just happens when people talk with Vosh. And I was like, yeah. And like, I think I'm really lucky to have had it, like, because some people, when they debate Vosh, like, they will be debate streamers.
Yeah.
And then, or not Vosh, but like other debate bros, like, they'll be debate streamers. And so their whole community turns on them. But for me, my community didn't turn on me. like there were people who didn't like me. Obviously, there's like all these people who think I'm genocidal, but for me, like my community was like, yeah, this is really ridiculous from the get-go. So it's like it's been very easy to just be like, or not easy, but I think it's made it easier than if it had been like my community being like actually believing like that I'm genocidal and want to hurt people. That would have been really rough. Like
Yeah,
I actually don't know
imagine.
what I would have done. But
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna go and make some food.
Yes, sorry, yeah, I've kept you for so long now, but honestly, I just
No,
like
you have not kept me. I had so much fun, and like honestly, every time I get to vent about debate bros, it's like really nice because like, I kind of always need to vent about them.
you could
So
do that as much as you want with me, mate. Honestly, like, yeah, I'm right there with you, to
thank
be
you.
honest. Yeah, for sure.
We can be each other's support group around their
Yeah, let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. Yeah, thank you so much for being here. Just once again, where can people find you if they want to find you?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Professor Flowers or on Twitter at Lua Borealis.
Wicked, wicked. And thank you so much for coming on. I will speak to you in the DMs soon. I'm sure, I don't doubt, I'll be more than happy to have you on again if you ever want to talk about anything. If you get any ideas of like, you know, oh shit, it'd be really good to talk about this, or like, oh, we should have spoken about this, then hit me up, let me know. Let's do it.
Definitely, yeah.
All right, mate. Well, thank you so much for joining me again. Take it easy and enjoy your tea.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good rest of your stream.
Will do. Take it easy.
Yeah.
Bye.